Chapter 1419. Do you love her? Within the boundless expanse, a being, its face shrouded in dark fog and essence, sheathing the cosmic emptiness with an authority that resonated through the fabric of existence, sat before multiple dark threads that seemed to connect unknown entities. Each thread was longer than the ring surrounding any planetary structure in existence. These threads formed shadows of an event that unearthed like a life playback. Time from all ages, the past, present, and future, seemed to converge into one. A figure materialized into existence, floating in place before the cosmic being that governed the unknown dimension. Emir. A low tremble resonated across the dimension as the massive cosmic being called out. My lord, the newly arrived figure who had tendrils of darkness coiled around its form in a long robe that bore sentient consciousness, bowed reverentially. State your business, the cosmic being commanded. Yes, your earthly offspring. Emir hesitantly spoke, but came to a brief pause. Out with it, the cosmic being seemed to grow impatient with every passing second. His vessel completed the transition process. Emir completed his initial sentence. Silence ensued between both beings for a few seconds. It was news that the cosmic being had been waiting to receive, but now he couldn't help but feel something was amiss. Why were you hesitant to inform me of this? The cosmic being inquired. That is because of what he has become, Emir responded while a dark tendril extended from his figure and made contact with one of the massive threads. Dark fog spread out, forming a vivid depiction of a person while the cosmic being watched. Earth, a level 200 mutated beast egg, roots from the Periscus tree in City Vit, and the heart of a kilo-ranked mixed blood. Within a restaurant in the middle of an unknown city, two familiar figures sat across one another. These three are the only items we are having difficulty acquiring, the figure who spoke earlier added. It almost sounds like you guys are about to perform some ritual or something. The other male from across the table who had a mask covering his face spoke with a slight chuckle. I mean, they're not the odd items on the list. The youngster with curly black hair coughed twice with a slightly bashful look. I don't even want to ask. I'll get the items you need as soon as I can. Shouldn't be much trouble. The masked man pulled his jacket hems together and began buttoning. How about the heart of a kilo-ranked mixed blood? Wouldn't that be? The youngster whispered with a look of concern. Not really. So long as you know where to look, I could acquire more than a couple of those. The masked man got to his feet at that point. What about your charges? The youngster inquired. I would never charge a brother of his. One couldn't see the face of the masked man, but from his eyes, it seemed like he was smiling. Consider this service to be on the house, he added while turning around to leave. That went surprisingly well, Endrick muttered while watching the masked man leave. By the time he got to the entrance, the masked man's shadow turned red and he dissolved into it, completely vanishing from the place. Endrick stood to his feet at that moment as well. It was time to leave. Blink, within another restaurant in Plankton City, the walls were adorned with enthralling holographic displays of vibrant colors. Two figures sat at a table whose surface reflected the intricate lighting in the surroundings. Unlike the other restaurant, only the two figures were within the restaurant and they were opposing genders. It looked like the entire place was booked for the rest of the day, as no visitors were allowed access. Why can't you use your real face? No one is watching, Vera nagged with a low tone. Before her was a man in a burgundy suit with dark hair, an ashen white face, and very red lips. One could tell that he was a man, but he also looked pretty like a woman. I am not risking revealing my identity. If anyone sees my face, even by mistake, I will have to end their life, Gustav replied while reaching out to grab a wine cup. You look like a transgender, Vera stated with a tone of dissatisfaction. Drop it, Vera. Gustav shot her a distasteful glare. Vera decided to keep quiet at that point and faced the meal before her. Finally, a little peace, Gustav sighed internally in relief. Your little girlfriend sure has gotten very rich since the last time you were on Earth, the system voiced in his head, referencing Vera's ability to privately book the most expensive restaurant in the city for the rest of the day. Yeah, I wonder what happened in my absence, but I could have done this too. When I was still rich, Gustav responded internally. Are you forever going to cry about your bank account getting restricted by the world government and disabled? The system began laughing hysterically. I had hundreds of millions. TCH, Gustav wished he could pull the system by the ear at that moment, as it couldn't understand the feelings of a human that had lost everything they had built. I will get it back in the future. For now, well, being broke isn't so bad. Gustav decided not to sweat it. How long will you be around? Vera inquired from the other end. Until I get all the items I require, Gustav replied before gulping down a tasty piece of meat. This is nice. It's been a while since I last properly enjoyed an Earth meal. Gustav couldn't help but recall all the months he had spent in outer space and on other planets. Boss Danzo meals are still 100% better. A hint of nostalgia hit Gustav. What items are you talking about? Do you need help? Vera inquired with a look of concern. Don't worry, it is being taken care of. I only need to head to Angie's for the last one. The moment Gustav mentioned Angie, Vera's face dropped. I have a confession to make, she mumbled. Gustav had a slightly confused look on his face. When I learned that Angie got consumed, I didn't feel bad, she uttered before taking a brief pause. Gustav leaned back against his seat to listen attentively and see where she was going with her confession. Sure, I sympathized with you and everyone else, but I didn't feel bad. If anything, a part of me felt glad that she was finally gone, Vera revealed without an ounce of remorse or guilt on her face. Does that make me a bad person? She raised her face to look up at Gustav. The concept of good and bad is chalked up to personal view. To me, it isn't necessarily bad, but to others, that might not be the case. Gustav reached out to take a glass. He slowly gulped down the contents, leaving Vera to dwell on his words for a bit. But why did you feel relieved? Gustav inquired despite already having an idea of the answer. Because I want you for myself, Vera blurted without hesitating. Predictable, the system voiced inwardly. Shush. Gustav hushed it and went back to focusing on Vera. Do you know that the reason why I am gathering the items I talked about is to get her back? Gustav inquired while rubbing his temples. Oh, well, there's nothing I can do about that. Although a part of me wishes for things to stay like this, a part of me also understands that you're affected by her absence. Vera forced a smile while speaking. Indeed I am. Gustav nodded slightly. What if I asked you not to? Would you not go looking for her? Vera voiced with a look of anticipation. No, I would go looking for her even if she was trapped in hell, Gustav replied while getting to his feet. It's time to go, he decided. However, before Gustav could leave the table, Vera placed her hand on his, causing him to stop in place. Do you love her? Vera questioned. Fwisk, a figure appeared in the middle of a neighborhood close to the edge of Plankton City. The figure had a reminiscent look as they scrutinized the environment, recalling its past look. Residential buildings lined up across the surroundings ranging from 20 to 40 stories. Compared to the past when they used to be mostly around 7 to 15 stories, this was an upgrade. The figure walked past a bunch of stores and even a few familiar people in the surroundings. It is much busier now. A smile hung on his face as he set his sights in a particular direction. It was a building close to the end of the street that measured around 21 stories in height. Staircases could be spotted around the sides, but no one seemed to be making use of them. With a single fluid motion, the figure arrived at the top of the building. Whoosh! Chapter 1420 Heartbreaking Infiltration. With a single fluid motion, the figure arrived at the top of the building. Whoosh! He kept scrutinizing the environment, and despite his striking appearance, no one seemed to notice his presence. This was because Gustav was capable of hiding his presence from anyone weaker than he was. The people within this neighborhood fell into that category. Do you think it would be better to go in and grab what is needed without anyone ever realizing I was there? Or should I directly ask her parents? Mr. and Mrs. Villandrobadia? Gustav questioned internally. I do not think they will be willing to welcome you into their home, but you already knew that, didn't you? The system voiced. The system's statement made Gustav take a trip down memory lane. Promise to protect her, Yvonne. Mrs. Villandrobadia broke down in tears while falling to her knees before Gustav. Not only did you not keep your promise, You are suspected of being the one responsible for what happened, which means you are to blame for her disappearance," Mr. Villandrobadia stated with a tone of fury, while Gustav just stood in the passageway with a look of remorse. "I saw you as a son, but that was my mistake." Mrs. Villandrobadia kept tearing up uncontrollably. "Leave here now or I am calling the MBO. The only reason why I haven't buried my hand in your face is because of the love Angie has for you," he added. Gustav could see Phil in the background looking down with a crestfallen expression. He couldn't even look Gustav in the eyes. "I will get her back," Gustav stated before turning around. "Do not give us false hope," Mrs. Villandrobadia yelled. Gustav paused his footsteps before turning slightly. "I will not rest until I get her back." His mind returned to the present and he turned around while letting out a sigh. Could he blame them? Although everyone had it wrong with the allegations of him destroying planet Osius, he couldn't entirely say he had nothing to do with it. A part of Gustav blamed himself because he knew the Death Angels weren't there for Falco alone. They were also there for him. He also knew that Angie's parents wouldn't know what to believe since the whole universe painted him as a culprit. One could only imagine how any good parent would feel about losing their child. It was easy to get overwhelmed with emotions, causing them to look at the situation from a place of sentimentality rather than logic. "I guess it would be best for everyone to remain oblivious of my presence," Gustav decided and took a step forward. The world before him came to a stop as he sped towards the ledge of the building and ran across its side till he reached the level of the 7th floor. Fwish, like the wind, he infiltrated the corridor of the 7th floor and made his way towards an apartment close to the end. Atomic manipulation has been activated. The system's notification popped up as Gustav snapped his fingers. A burst of milky-colored light enshrouded his entire figure, causing him to turn a bit translucent. Gustav took a step forward and walked through the door of the apartment while it was still locked. He was now in Angie's family apartment, and the tranquil silence made it seem like no one was home. However, Gustav knew better. He turned towards the small pathway that led to the rooms and kept walking till he reached the front of the second. Sniff, sniff, the room door was slightly ajar, and one could hear muffled weeping coming from within. Gustav stood in place briefly without going in. He was already invading privacy and didn't want to go further until the person within stepped out. Sniff, sniff, dash, I should have stopped you. Dash, I regret ever letting you join the MBO. Dash, I regret ever letting you go out there to participate in ISOP. Dash, I regret ever letting you be friends with Gustav. Chapter 1421 Stagnant Citrus Void Good Luck. Indrik tapped EE's shoulder twice before following after Gustav. "These two little fuckers," EE sighed. Gustav's fingertips emitted bluish beams as he drew rectangular lines in midair. A spatial doorway appeared, and he stepped in alongside Indrik. They entered a space of Gustav's, making where an oddly shaped device was centered. Gustav tapped on a couple of buttons attached to the device, and it shot out rays of light that displayed a particular part of outer space. Within the display, a mixture of gray and white matter that seemed alive engulfed orbital bodies in the distance. Right before their very eyes, Gustav and Indrik could see stars as large as the Milky Way sun. Asteroids and every other thing in sight get drawn into the gray and white matter. It cruised through space with its gigantic form and vanished not too long after. The device then went on to make a couple of analyses based on the properties of the gray and white matter. "I knew it," Gustav mumbled. "Knew what? What are we looking at here?" Indrik inquired with a tone of curiosity. "Do you see this signature right here?" Gustav pointed at one of the displays that had a slash sign. "Yeah. That shows that whatever the warp demolator consumes doesn't necessarily get destroyed. Then, what happens to them? It's a spatial sign that interprets that they get transported to an entirely different location from where they were in space." "What? That's insane." "I know, right? To be able to teleport orbital masses of that size. Incredible." At that point, Gustav began to put two and two together. "You are finally getting closer to the truth," the system voiced in his mind. "You have always shunned it whenever I mentioned the destruction of planet Humbat. Does this mean their planet just got swallowed up by the warp demolator and transferred elsewhere? You already arrived at the answer. Why still ask? Because a lot of details are still missing. The warp demolator appears randomly even though I can read its appearance now. How did the Slarkovs know that their planet was in danger of being swallowed up before it appeared? They must have left before the appearance of the warp demolator, which means they lied about their planet getting destroyed. What is the aim and objective here? I don't get it, Gustav rambled internally while staring at the device before him. That's what the 5-year quest is for. Find Dimension 6 in Planet Humbad and the answers will be waiting for you. The system voiced. That's where the problem lies. The warp demolator scanner has confirmed the spatial transportation, but where they were transported to? Gustav stared at the readings before him. What do all these mean? Endrick pointed at the bottom half of the readings. That is where the warp demolator scanner says they were transported to, Gustav responded. Reappearance determined. Stagnant Sidereus Void number 792. What is a stagnant Sidereus Void? Endrick questioned, looking clueless. Since there are orbital bodies, planets, stars, asteroids, moons, they can only be transported to some sort of galaxy. The only problem is, this stagnant Sidereus Void does not exist. Gustav had a conflicted expression after reaching the end of his statement. How is that possible? Surely they can't be transported to somewhere that doesn't exist. Endrick folded his arms while reeling forward in confusion. It could be a pocket dimension, Endrick added. A pocket dimension can't hold so many orbital bodies like that. The laws of gravitational balance and space would not allow it. They would attract to each other, causing a collision that would wipe everything out of existence. The orbital bodies and dimensions included, Gustav explained. What if the stagnant Sidereus is just a place that you don't know about? Maybe we just need to ask around, Endrick suggested. I read every marked territory across the universe during our training in the MBO. I took the memories of the space pirate who has experienced journeying across galaxies for decades. During our time out of Earth, I further broadened my knowledge and I gained enlightenment about unsourced locations when my cosmic superiority forced me into a meeting with the other cosmic superior beings. Knowledge beyond alphas that are older than 1,000 years old. Trust me when I say, I've never heard of stagnant Sidereus, Gustav iterated with such pompousness that Endrick fell speechless. Well, you are the outworldly after all, Endrick voiced with a casual shrug. So what else have we not considered? He proceeded to inquire. */ this sign. Gustav pointed at a very odd sign close to the bottom area of the readings. I know what this one means. Premonition, Endrick stated. Yeah, but how is it related to all this? Gustav wondered out loud. Maybe the 5 premonitions? No, it is something else, Endrick swiftly corrected himself. Yeah, it is something else. Gustav shot a thoughtful gaze at the readings before coming to a decision. Let's be ready for when next the warp demolator appears. Gustav sauntered towards the right. Why? What are you planning? Endrick questioned, but soon his eyes widened in realization. Don't tell me. The MBO tower. I don't understand this request of yours. Officer EE, Commander Zenatus voiced with a look of confusion. The Death Angel that was captured. The research center is doing all they can to crack down on it and gather more information about the other side, right? EE threw out this question. Yes, indeed that is true, Commander Zenatus replied. I am saying I can help. Remember, I was one of the few who had a personal encounter with them, EE voiced with a convincing tone. Did you suddenly figure something out? Commander Zenatus raised an eyebrow in intrigue. Yes, once I see it again in person. EE sat up and took note of Commander Zenatus' pondering expression. You know that unauthorized personnel are not allowed to head there, right? I do. It is a top-secret location even amongst MBO officers. I know. A brief silence ensued between them as Commander Zenatus peered into EE's eyes with suspicion. Tell me the true reason you want to head there, Commander Zenatus demanded. There is no. It's for him, isn't it? A smile suddenly appeared on Commander Zenatus' face. How did he? He couldn't have figured it out, right? He gulped down saliva while maintaining eye contact with Commander Zenatus in a bid to decrease suspicion. I don't know what you're. Before E could complete his sentence, Commander Xanatus cut him off. It's okay. I am an ally. I've always been. Did Gustav never tell you that we go way back? Commander Xanatus burst into a full-blown smile. East sat in place with a stunned look, unable to decide on what to say to deter the high-ranked officer before him. Commander Xanatus proceeded to pull out an image of him and Gustav receiving awards together and a few other holographic pictures of the meeting. Be careful, though. If you had gone to another officer, things could have gone really bad, he voiced. Yeah. He rubbed his head while letting out a sigh of relief. You're not very good at coming up with lies. You should learn from Gustav, Commander Xanatus pointed out. I'm not sure I want to learn that. He lightly stroked his afro with a bashful look. You should. Gustav is a master in the art of deceit. Commander Xanatus was chuckling. That is true. Hold on. Does this mean that you have been deceiving everyone like you were on their side with the allegations against Gustav all this time? Inquired. Of course. I could never truly be on their side. I owe that kid my life. Commander Xanatus bore a reminiscent look. I am secretly working behind the scenes to clear his name, but I will not bore you with the details. We all have our parts to play in this. It'll help you get into the underground research center, Commander Xanatus added while reaching out to shake E. Thank you. E received the handshake with immense gratitude. Within the fiery depths of an active volcano, where molten lava bubbled and roiled with relentless fury, a figure sat amid red bubbling liquid. The air crackled with the searing heat of the molten rock, sending waves of intense heat radiating through the cavernous chamber. The figure exuded an aura of raw power, their presence commanding reverence that prevented the surroundings from having any effect on him. Molten lava flowed around him like a river of liquid fire. The figure got repeatedly bathed by the fiery liquid, and yet his skin radiated with smoothness. His eyes were closed, almost like he was meditating in the perilous environment. Dark smoke pervaded the vicinity which didn't bother him in the slightest. After what seemed like ages, he suddenly opened his eyes. I told you, I don't want to be bothered until he returns. Chapter 1422. Completing a monthly quest after what seemed like ages, he suddenly opened his eyes. I told you, I don't want to be bothered until he returns. He has returned. Another masculine voice traveled across the volcanic domain as a figure descended from the opening above. Eldris? The figure voiced a tone of disbelief after identifying the newly arrived person. Hello, Rhea. It's been too long. Eldris' silver hair fluttered enchantingly as he floated before Rhea. Both of them emitted an undaunting and overbearing presence that made the surroundings chime in reverence. Did I just hear you say he has returned? Rhea questioned with intrigue. Has my rival truly returned? He stood to his feet immediately. Eldris, whose eyes were shut as usual, suddenly opened them. His pupils gathered all the color in the universe, sparkling with such beauty that defied human comprehension. Yes, Gustav has returned, he stated with a smile. Then, does this mean it is time to get Angie and Falco back? Anticipation began to build within Rhea as he questioned. Why don't we go ask him ourselves? Eldris began floating upwards. Rhea grinned excitedly before crouching and leaping upwards. Thwoosh, both their figures blasted off into the sky and soon vanished from sight. Good thing daily tasks stop. I can't find myself doing stupid things like this all the time. Gustav stood at the top of a skyscraper with a slightly irritated look. Maybe I should bring them back, the system teased. Maybe I should bend you over and spank you when you're in physical form, Gustav stated. That is inappropriate. It is what you deserve. Silence. Gustav decided to ignore the system and stared at the notification before him. Monthly quest. Infiltrate the MBO tower and sabotage the sign. Squinting eyes face. Status. Uncompleted. Squinting eyes face. Time elapsed. 3 weeks. What even is the point of this? Gustav peered into the distance where the MBO tower was located. The glowing MBO sign could be spotted vividly from his angle. It was a beacon of power and authority, and now the system wanted him to mess with it. Maybe to teach you how to have fun a little, the system chimed in. Fun is the last thing I need right now. Angie and Falco are still out there. Who knows what they are currently going through? Gustav's face darkened as he recalled Angie's mother's tears. Exactly why you need it. You've been on this for a year. At least celebrate the fact that you're getting closer. The system voiced once more. TCH, I'm only doing this because I have a bit of time on my hands since I'm waiting for Indrik and EES return. If not, I wouldn't even give this the thought of the day. I don't care about failing, Gustav blurted with a disinterested look. Yeah, just do it already. One could almost sense the system rolling its pretty eyes at Gustav. Gustav sauntered forward and leapt off the ledge of the skyscraper. MBO Tower. Holographic monitors flickered to life throughout a control room, displaying a dizzying array of data and visuals. Charts, graphs, and schematics floated in midair, updating in real time as officers monitored the status of various systems and operations. At the heart of the control room stood the central command station, a massive console adorned with an array of buttons, switches, and holographic displays that served as the nerve center of the operation. Officers manned the station with unwavering focus, their eyes glued to the screens as they monitored the status of critical systems and operations. Officer Chin, Gradier Howe has requested that the footage documentation of Case 1729P be sent to his office. An officer in an MBO outfit approached from the entrance. Not Gradier Howe again, the officer before the largest holographic screen lamented. All right, no problem. Tell him it will be sent by the end of today. Officer Chen responded while moving towards another corner of the control room. About 26 different MBO officers were working in the control room, but it seemed like Officer Chen was the leader there. He began to give out some set of instructions while also tapping on some controls himself. He suddenly sensed a presence behind him and turned around. I already told you, it will be sent by the end of the day. Actually, Commander Zenatus asked for you. The young officer who initially came in reported. Oh, Commander Zenatus? Officer Chin's face showed that he was wondering why Commander Zenatus would request his presence. All right, Officer Chen understood that requests from higher-ranked MBO officers took priority. He walked out with the officer after rushing out instructions to some officers on what to do while asking a few to hold on till returned. About a minute later, Officer Chen returned. Now, where were we? He questioned while moving towards the largest control panel area. Dash, can you see that? Dash, what the fuck? Haha, the MBO tower has a different sign. Dash, MILF Busters organization? Dash, this is hilarious, haha. Dash, what is up with that sign? Dash, you. Mateo, close your eyes. The entirety of Plankton City was in uproar at the moment as everyone stared at the sign on the MBO tower. Since the letters were so bold and glowing, every person in the city could read them clearly. Many were completely astonished, while some found it hilarious and others disgusting. The MBO tower was getting a bunch of calls from all across the city at the moment, and even many people had taken photographs to post on the internet. The MBO became a laughing stock for the netizens as even news and media outlets decided to pass it across even further. What do you think you're doing, Officer Chen? A high-ranking MBO officer approached the control room and spotted Officer Chen just standing in place. What is? Officer Chan shook his head repeatedly while looking around and wondering why he was standing in the middle of the corridor. What is this immature and incredibly foolish stunt you just pulled? The officer yelled in annoyance. What are you talking about, Sir Dexter? Officer Chin couldn't even remember how he got to the corridor. He only recalled coming to and finding himself there. This is what I am talking about, you idiot. The high-ranking officer pulled out a holographic tablet that was currently displaying pictures of the MBO tower on the internet. Officer Chin's eyes widened in disbelief. As he stared at the pictures, his jaw nearly dropped to the floor. What the hell? Monthly quest. Infiltrate the MBO tower and sabotage the sign. Status. Successful. Rewards. Plus 1,000,000 EXP. Plus 1 level up. All skills and abilities level up. Advancement of Crimson Matter Bloodline to grade. Plus 1 card that fully unlocks ability of host choice for 10 minutes. The rewards are not bad, but I'm never doing anything like this again. Gustav stood atop a skyscraper in the form of Officer Chen. His body slowly morphed back to his original look, and he proceeded to take his MBO uniform off. Tell me you don't get a little kick from seeing that sign and the MBO getting bashed all across the world. I don't. Gustav's face remained straight. Don't lie. The system cajoled. All right, it's a little funny. Gustav chuckled a little before going back to his usual poker face. The system kept teasing him internally, but he decided to ignore it. Status window. Gustav muttered. Host attributes. Name. Gustav Crimson level. 199 class. Parallel being EXP. 39 524 090/270 000 HP. 310 000/310 000 energy. 179 000/180 000 attributes. Strength. 712 perception. 724 mental fortitude. 719 agility. 714 speed. 720 bravery. 717 intelligence. 716 charm. 401 defense. 721 vitality. 723 endurance. 713 attributes points. 101 level 199. I wonder if there will be any surprises when I reach 200. Gustav wondered out loud. Want me to tell you? The system inquired internally. You've been nice lately. I'm starting to think you're an imposter. Gustav replied to the system. All right, I won't tell you then. Tell me. No, you lost your chance. You'd better spill. Make me. I will. You couldn't even make Angie spill. Gustav remained silent for a few seconds before responding. Now that's the mean bitches system I remember. Gustav arrived back at EE's apartment but sensed a presence within. Upon better perception, he sensed it wasn't one but two presences. And from what he could sense, they were very powerful. Gustav hid his presence and stepped into the apartment without so much as making a sound. The two presences in the apartment were now clearly visible to him. His eyes widened slightly after identifying them. Eldris? Rhea? Gustav called out with a tone of surprise. Gustav? Rival? Both figures voiced simultaneously. How did he get to our front without us noticing? They both came to the realization with expressions of bewilderment. To them it seemed like Gustav had just appeared in place. Meanwhile, he walked in but didn't reveal his presence until he identified them. Rival! Rhea yelled once more and lunged forward in joy. Chapter 1423 Gustav Crimson is on Earth, Rival. Rhea yelled once more and lunged forward in joy. Gustav raised his right hand to block Rhea's face with a wry smile. Calm your excitement. Eldris chuckled from behind as he stood to his feet. Don't be so harsh. He missed you, he stated. Everyone did. Eldris added with a reminiscent look. How did you guys know I was on Earth? Gustav questioned with a slightly suspicious tone. Why did you think EE would keep it from us? Eldris threw out the question, causing Gustav to shake his head slightly. It was supposed to be a quick pop in and out of Earth. And yet so many unexpected things happened. Gustav let out a small sigh. So that was you facing the clone? I suspected. Eldris smiled while extending a fist. What clone? Rhea scratched his head cluelessly. Yeah, it was me, Gustav replied while bumping Eldris' fist softly. That was just one out of the many things I faced since I arrived here. I still had to stop a mad scientist from getting rid of everyone's bloodline. Fight Jack and mess with that MBO sign. Gustav couldn't believe just how crazy the last 2 weeks had gone. You fought Jack Sherwin? You were the one who messed with that MBO sign? Eldris and Rhea voiced simultaneously in disbelief. Not by choice, but yeah. Also, in a different timeline, Gustav took a seat and slumped back against the sofa. Who won? Rhea kicked his feet up excitedly while inquiring. Who do you think? Gustav voiced in response. Well, seeing as you are here now. Eldris couldn't even complete his sentence because he knew that would technically be saying Gustav was the most powerful on Earth. He knew it was possible in due time but couldn't fathom Gustav already reaching that level at 21 years old. Rival, you won. Rhea's eyes widened in astonishment. No, it was barely a stalemate. I probably would be dead by now if he used full strength from the start, Gustav bluntly pointed out. Oh, Both Eldris and Rhea voiced together. Anyways, at least I got to gauge his strength and understand what level I need to acquire before I can be on equal footing with him. Gustav strangely seemed glad about the encounter. The fact that you can even contend with him in the slightest is commendable. Eldris patted Gustav's shoulder twice. I only have a year more to not just be able to contend with him, but reach a higher level of power, or I fail the quest, Gustav reminded himself internally. So how did you get away from him? Rhea questioned. I didn't. He had to leave to face that half-white and black unknown entity, Gustav responded. What half-white and black entity? Rhea was extremely dumbfounded. Were you living under a rock? You're a part of the MBO, you should know. Gustav felt that Rhea seemed too uninformed on some of the matters that he should be aware of. Technically, he was living under a volcano. Eldris chimed in from the side, causing Rhea to smile wryly. Gustav was further confused by the revelation. Did you quit the MBO? No. I took a leave, Rhea answered while rotating his right arm. He said he didn't want to be disturbed until you return. Eldris chuckled while revealing. Hey, he didn't have to know that. Rhea yelled bashfully. He didn't stop channeling his bloodline in the active volcano until I informed him of your return, Eldris added while Rhea pouted at the side. He is a lot more powerful now. I can sense it, Gustav voiced in observation. Rhea's eyes widened in excitement. Really? Gustav nodded. From what I can sense, your energy is higher than Eldris. Well, family issues haven't exactly made me active this last year. I also took a leave from the MBO, Eldris revealed. Tell me all about it. Gustav showed a concerned expression. Nah, it's nothing to be bothered about, Eldris waved it off. But I did hear of that being. It is suspected to come from the same place as the Death Angels. Eldris couldn't help but sense an ominous feeling while mentioning it. If I was skeptical about that before, I am 100% certain now. Gustav then mentioned how the black and white entity broke the Death Angel out the last time. But how can it easily travel between worlds? Didn't you mention that the Death Angels were only able to do that because of that premonition thing that happened on planet Osius? Eldris asked, sounding conflicted. That's the mystery. If I hadn't reversed time, the Death Angel would be truly free by now. Gustav held his chin in bafflement. Wait, you can reverse time now? Rhea's jaw dropped. I can do a lot of things now, Gustav voiced like it wasn't a big deal, but even Eldris was amazed. Damn, just how powerful are you now? Rhea questioned. Not powerful enough, Gustav replied. You weren't really planning on rescuing Falco and Angie all by yourself, right? Rhea asked while folding his arms. I didn't want to get you guys involved. It would be too dangerous, Gustav shook his head. That's why EE informed us behind your back. You need all the help you can get if you intend to infiltrate that other dimension, Eldris pointed out. No, only I and Indrik will be heading there after we've gathered all the items we need. Gustav immediately refused. You can't stop us from coming with. Falco and Angie are our friends too. Do you know how long I've been waiting to do something about their rescue? Now that the opportunity has presented itself, I want sit back, Rhea voiced with a fired-up expression. They both stared at the look on Gustav's face, hoping for some type of reaction. After a brief silence, Gustav stood to his feet. No. Gustav Crimson is on Earth. I can feel it. Within an office, situated in an MBO base, a high-ranking female officer roamed the place with a conflicted expression. She had a long, green ponytail while the rest of her hair was sky blue. Her face had cat-like features with whiskers, but overall, her body was humanoid in structure. For how long have you been feeling this way, ma'am? An MBO major questioned from the other end. A little over 2 weeks now, she replied. Could you perhaps be referring to the clone? The 5-foot-tall major with a blue slimy face questioned. No, I am very much aware of the clone. I am talking about the real deal. He is here. She kept prancing about the place with a look of conflict on. I don't know, ma'am. The MBO major was clueless. Think, Gohan. Think, what anomaly has occurred during that time frame? She questioned, causing pressure to descend upon the surroundings. Except for the clone, I can't really think of anything else, ma'am. Gohan shook his head. I said think. She yelled with a horrifying tone. causing Gohan to tremble in place. Hmm. Ah, eh. I think there's. Gohan kept stuttering in uncertainty. Oh, just spit it out, she stated with a tone of annoyance. I just recall that there was a mention of Jack's encounter with the person who faced the clone. He said in another timeline the Earth was in trouble because of the appearance of that black and white entity. Time was rewound, but he remembered that it happened because of his strength. Gohan tooted on. He left the clone in the hands of the person who took it on and returned to the research facility. Ma'am Reina, he said. The person informed him. Gohan paused to see if she was starting to see the pattern. That person who faced the clone. Did we ever figure out his identity? General Reina questioned rhetorically. Gohan shook his head in response. But a person powerful enough to reverse time on a scale where even Jack would be affected must at least be an alpha-ranked, or maybe even higher. The number of mixed bloods on that level of power is around 200 in the entire populace of billions. We have records for them and know the names of each and every one of them. None of them has this ability. When Gohan got to this point, General Reina's eyes widened. Since this isn't a recorded alpha, it means that this person must have become an alpha after the last one was recorded, which was years ago. If they were on Earth when it happened or weren't in hiding, then it would be a part of the public records, but because they were in hiding, General Reina came to a pause as a sense of realization hit her. The person who faced the clone was the real Gustav in disguise, Gohan stated with a tone of certainty. Now we just need proof. General Reina stopped prancing at this moment. Where would someone like Gustav Crimson hide out? Chapter 1424, is that the last item on the list? General Reina stopped prancing at that moment. Where would someone like Gustav Crimson hide out? She questioned while narrowing her eyes. He has friends, Officer Gohan pointed out. Indeed, one of them has to know he is on Earth. One of them has to know exactly where he is, General Reina voiced with a tone of realization. General Gohan hesitantly stuttered. Speak your mind, General Reina stated with a clear tone. Ahem, so. I think we should inform the higher-ups about our conceptions and plans. To run things smoothly, we will need all the help we can get. Gohan spoke with a slightly jittery tone. Of all the bad ideas, this is your worst. No, Gohan. I won't do that until I find him and bring him into custody myself. General Reina turned down his suggestion immediately. Ma'am, if he is truly as powerful as an alpha, with capabilities relating to rewinding time, it will be very dangerous for us to go on the endeavor alone. Gohan tried to persuade her. No, I won't share the glory with the others. Think about just how much I will be rewarded if I single-handedly bring him back. The promotions. Her face displayed a look of anticipation as she raised her head. It will be enough for me to get to the next rank, but if taking him in becomes a joint effort, I can kiss my promotion goodbye, General Reina stated. I will bring Gustav Crimson and myself. Within an apartment, a group of 6 sat around the sofa, seemingly having a conversation. Who is she? Rhea pointed at the sky-blue-haired girl on Gustav's left. She's Cersei from planet Vespa, Gustav answered. You must be one of Father's friends that he always talks about, Cersei voiced with intrigue. Father! Father! Rhea and Eldris yelled in confusion at the same time. Oh, you two are not up to speed yet. Endrick shook his head. You cheated on Angie? Promiscuous rival. Rhea shouted like he had just been betrayed, causing everyone to stare at him like an idiot. What? Rhea yelled. You do know that he can't have a baby within the last year to grow to 18 years of age, right? Eldris felt like he shouldn't even be explaining. So what? It's Gustav. Nothing is impossible when it comes to him. Rhea threw up his hands. I hate to say it, but that actually makes sense. EE blinked repeatedly. Everyone else besides Endrick suddenly felt confused and turned to stare at Gustav. You didn't, right? Eldris questioned very quietly. I haven't had sex in over a year if that's what you're asking. Gustav nearly face-bombed after seeing their expressions. They let out a sigh of relief and immediately burst into laughter. Angie would have killed you. I literally mentioned that she is from planet Vespa. Promiscuous rival. Why does she call you father? I know, right? It's gross. She calls me uncle and she's older than I am. The group let out a few more series of laughter before they finally went into the topic of discussion. I have gotten the level 200 mutated beast egg, roots from the Periscus tree, and the heart of a kilo-ranked mixed blood, Indrik announced. The heart of a kilo-ranked mixed blood? Where did you? Before Rhea could complete the question, he was cut short. No interruptions, Rhea. We need to focus, Ildris stated. Rhea kept quiet, but was still curious. He could only guess that it belonged to some criminal or something. I will be heading to the Underground Ice Research Center tomorrow. I'll get the sample from the Death Angel, E.E. stated with a tone of anticipation. Is that the last item on the list? Ildris inquired. Yes. Once we get that, we're pretty much good to go, Indrik responded with a gentle nod. Then, do you need any help tomorrow, E.E.? Ildris turned to face Emma. Nah. Once I get there, I just need to be near to teleport a little chunk of its flesh to my storage, E. responded with a tone of assurance. All right then. So when do we leave Earth? Rhea questioned. Immediately after E gets the sample. I don't want to stay another second on Earth before something crazy happens again, Gustav answered with a decisive look. Also, it isn't we. It's just Indrik and I. None of you are coming with, he added. Come on, rival. You will need as much help as you can get. Rhea and Ildris tried to persuade him. I am trying to rescue a loved one. I don't intend to lose more along the line. Gustav refused their help for the umpteenth time. Then why is Indrik going with you? Isn't he a loved one too? Rhea pointed out. Because he is more powerful than the both of you, and can certainly hold his own, Gustav stated bluntly. As bad as it sounded, Gustav was saying exactly what he felt. He knew they had both increased in strength, but didn't want to risk it. Gustav didn't have complete faith in them not getting themselves killed. Angie is our friend too. We can't sit back and watch only you two do a dangerous job that could be less dangerous with our help. Ildris kept trying to persuade Gustav. Nah, it's more dangerous if you two come with me, Koss, then I'd have more people to look out for. Gustav shot it down once more. Come on, say something. Rhea turned to E for help. Don't look at me. I'm not tagging along either, cause someone gotta be in the MBO as a mole. Raised both hands in defeat. Also, they were well aware that once Gustav's mind was made up, it was almost impossible to change it. So, if we prove we're powerful enough, will you accept our help? Ildris questioned with a serious expression. Gustav folded his arms and leaned back against the sofa. And how do you intend to do that? He questioned with a calm but intrigued tone. The next day arrived in a jiffy. By the time dawn arrived, was already on his way out of Plankton City. He stared at the enchanting city slowly disappearing into the horizon from the window of an aircraft. Was in full uniformed outfit as the aircraft flew him out of the city on what was deemed as official business. There was a weekly report that a particular officer would usually write to the MBO higher-ups after visiting the Underground Research Center to briefly inspect the place. Unfortunately, this higher-ranked MBO officer was down with a mixed blood illness that would take a couple of days to recover from. Luckily, had been chosen to fill in for him on that particular day for the weekly inspection. But was it really just luck? East sat in place with a calm demeanor as the aircraft cruised across the pristine blue skies. How soon until we get there? He tapped a button by his armrest while inquiring. We will be arriving within the hour, sir. The pilot responded from the cabin area. Good, muttered. It was actually a distance that he could have opened a vortex to from the start, but he had to take the aircraft since it was a different kind of MBO business. Time went by very quickly and EES aircraft touched down on the closest airstrip. Beyond the airstrip was a terrain of ice that extended into the horizon. They were supposed to continue the journey from there with Frost-designed vehicles. However, seemed to have grown tired of using vehicles and simply opened a vortex. He walked in and arrived at the surface of the underground research facility. His presence immediately alerted Jack, who was floating above the premises. What do you want here? He didn't even get a second to appreciate the scenery surrounding him before he heard a voice behind him. He gulped down saliva while turning around. Lo and behold, the person who stood across from me was the one and only Jack Sherwin, the strongest mixed blood in existence. Are you mute? Jack questioned after not getting a reply for a few seconds. No. I am Officer EE. Here for the weekly inspection, EE finally responded. The person in charge of the weekly inspection is Commander Xanatus. What are you doing here? Jack's tone rose with suspicion. I am here on his behalf. He is down with iridices, so the higher-ups had me replace him for only today. EE was a bit taken aback that Jack wasn't informed about it. Oh, they may have mentioned something about that. You are that EE person who is supposed to do the inspection today. Jack held his chin as a look of understanding appeared on his face. I just said that. EE's left eye twitched repeatedly as he smiled wryly. The world's strongest surely can't be a forgetful person, right? Sir Jack, he is with us. Chapter 1425, Dark Sample, acquired the world's strongest surely can't be a forgetful person, right? Sir Jack, he is here to check on us. One of the MBO researchers voiced from behind while approaching. They walked through the underground passage entrance and surrounded Sure. Just be careful, Jack stated before ascending across the air in the next instant. He went back to watching over the vicinity from up there, while the researchers welcomed They led towards the underground entry point, and he followed them with a look of relief on his face. The main hindrance had been avoided. They walked through icy tunnelways, leading to different spots within the research facility. The place was quite massive, and couldn't help but think that despite its size, only one entity was being held within. Passed by a couple of underground research stations where different scientists were working on projects related to the Death Angel. He then asked to check in with some of the stations and even discovered what they were each working on before moving toward the next. How to weaken a Death Angel. How to harness the Death Angel's power. How to make the dark creature submissive. Made sure to note down the objectives of each research station, as well as how far they had come in achieving them. Trust the government to always want to get the power of anything without fully understanding it yet. Secretly shook his head disapprovingly. He wasn't too surprised by all he was seeing, but at the same time, he hoped that they wouldn't end up messing things up. Judging by how much time the Death Angel had been underneath the surface, it seemed like no intelligible decision had been undertaken yet. When thought about it, he felt someone had to be responsible for keeping things in order, and he was right. Grand Commander Cheyenne had been making things look superficial on the surface because of the others. Only he and a few researchers knew the true objective they were working on. After scooting about the place, the researchers finally brought to the precise location where the restrained Death Angel was situated. It's been a while, muttered while standing before the massive reinforced metal transparent glass. On the other side of the glass that separated them was the Death Angel, whose dark limbs were firmly bound. The creature's hollow, ashy eyes made contact with and it suddenly began making a strange noise. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. The Death Angel sounded like a chattering monkey, but continued to make a noise. Happy to see me again. Huh? Well, the feeling isn't mutual. Retorted with a look that expressed his disgust at the creature. We understand that this isn't your first encounter, but it is the first we've ever seen it react this way. One of the researchers voiced in astonishment as they watched approach the glass. This one and his buddies nearly did away with me and my friends. We did all we could to keep them away, but they brought death to whatever they touched. Folded his arms while reminiscing. We were told that the 9 others merged to become an even more powerful being. Another researcher voiced with newfound interest. Yes, Gustav Crimson had to face it all on his own to protect the rest of us, and despite missing one, their merge was still so immensely powerful. While was explaining, his left hand was secretly twirling by his side. Barely noticeable glows could be spotted on his fingertips, which also appeared behind the restrained Death Angel. A very tiny vortex pocket encircled a protrusion on the back of the Death Angel's head before sucking it in and vanishing. Gustav had to put himself in a state of matter just to get it away. If Grand Commander Cheyenne hadn't forcibly trapped this one, their merged version would have been way more powerful, and maybe I wouldn't be standing here right now. Paused briefly as if pondering on what he had just said. He internally sighed in relief after getting exactly what he came for. All that was left was to write a few more words in the recording tab and get out of there. That is quite the fascinating tale. Officer E.E., a strong female voice suddenly drifted into their hearing. Everyone turned to the side to spot a female MBO officer approaching. She had a long, green ponytail while the rest of her hair was sky blue. Her face had cat-like features with whiskers, but overall, her body was humanoid in structure. Trotting behind her was a 5-foot-tall male with green, hairy skin and glowing lines in his eyes. He, of course, was also clad in an MBO outfit, although it was quite obvious that he was levels below the woman due to their uniform differences. General Reyna, we didn't know you were coming, the researchers voiced respectfully as soon as they sighted her, even though they were clearly shocked to see her in their midst. Although the research facility was an unauthorized location for MBO officers, General Reyna was a very high-ranking officer, so it didn't apply to her. She could visit the place whenever she wanted, but it didn't stop the researchers from appearing shocked. This was because MBO generals and higher were very busy individuals. They wouldn't just show up at the facility unannounced, especially when they had already sent a lower-ranking officer to visit for weekly inspections. Don't worry about me, just passing by and decided to say hi. General Reyna's face bore an intensity that anyone would find terrifying. General, welcome. E.E. bowed slightly in respect. I am just taking Commander Zaneta's place for the inspection today, E.E. added despite never having seen the woman before. Oh, never mind my presence here. I was enjoying your intriguing tale, so please by all means continue, she spoke while pausing to lean against the wall by the side. Ahaha, maybe another time then, General. I've spun enough tales for today. I need to get back to submit my report. E.E. bowed slightly once more before turning around in a bid to leave. I couldn't help but notice something. Officer E.E. General Reyna began speaking again, causing E.E. to pause in place. It almost seems like you made Gustav Crimson look like a hero in that tale of yours, she added. This happened before Gustav Crimson was branded as the sole party responsible for the destruction of planet Osius. Grand Commander Cheyenne can attest to the fact that we were indeed protected by him. He played a huge role in helping us survive. E.E. turned around to give a proper explanation. So you think he is a hero, the Earth prodigy responsible for the death of billions? I see. General Reyna voiced with a tone of understanding. I don't. E.E. paused and let out a small sigh. The world seems to have forgotten his deeds so quickly. Two things can be true at the same time, General. And one of them happens to be the fact that he has indeed saved the entire planet more than once. No matter how much everyone tries to deny it, the deed is already written in the history books. E.E. smiled while pointing out. The entire place descended into utter silence as the researchers refrained from butting in. It was a sensitive topic after all. Now, if you will excuse me, General, E.E. said respectfully before turning around to leave. General Reyna watched his departing figure with a keen gaze. Thank you for telling me that you are aware of Gustav's return to Earth. Come, Gohan. Let's go. General Reyna stood upright and proceeded to walk out. After they were all gone, the researchers let out sighs of relief as the pressure in the air lessened. That was intense. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the skyline of Plankton City, the setting sun painted the sky in a stunning array of warm hues. Ribbons of pink and orange streaked across the horizon, blending seamlessly with the deepening shades of purple and blue that signaled the approaching night. Skyscrapers of sleek glass and steel shimmered in the fading light, their mirrored surfaces reflecting the enthralling setting sun. Vibrant colors filled the evening sky as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting a breathtaking tableau of natural beauty that stretched out as far as the eye could see. I have gotten the sample. E.E. appeared within his apartment from a swirling violet sea of energy. You're back. Finally. The group who had been awaiting his return the entire time chanted in excitement. Sorry I took so long. I still had to submit my report, E.E. said while staring at the sunset view from the window by the right. So long as you got it. That is all that matters, Gustav stated with a nod of satisfaction. Where did Ildris and Rhea go? Chapter 1426, General Reyna's Visitation. So long as you got it, that is all that matters, Gustav stated with a nod of satisfaction. Where did Eldris and Rhea go? E's eyebrows creased in confusion. He certainly couldn't sense them within or around the apartment, so it had him wondering if they had already left after failing to convince Gustav. They're out, engaging in a task to prove their capability, Gustav answered while crossing his legs. You really gave them something to do? EE voiced, his eyes glinting with interest. Of course. SJ is watching them now, so I should get feedback within an hour. Gustav responded in anticipation. You really don't want them to come with you, do you? EE questioned calmly. No, I do not, Gustav answered bluntly. I wonder just what crazy task you gave them. Ily's thoughts ran amok. Gustav smirked in response. You'll see, soon. Pass the dark sample to Indrik. We should be off soon, he added. EE took an item out of his storage device. Despite being kept within a container, dark energy still oozed from the sample. It wriggled continuously like it wanted to escape EE's grasp. Let me take that off your hands. Indrik twirled his finger, causing telekinetic energy to wrap around the container. Fly, the container floated towards him in the next instant, and he grabbed it. You can head to the spacecraft and get it warmed up. They'll be with you in a minute, Gustav instructed. I don't want to miss their return, but all right. Indrik stood to his feet. Is she? He pointed at Cersei, but before he could complete his sentence, Gustav uttered a strongly disapproving, no. Indrik shrugged and turned around to leave. It made sense that Gustav wouldn't want Cersei to be a part of the next journey. Considering that he was skeptical about Rhea and Eldris' participation, he definitely wouldn't give Cersei a single thought. I hope it's all right if she stays here with you. She's not from Earth, so she really doesn't have anyone on this planet. Gustav turned to E. Sure thing, man. I have no issues with that. E responded with an unbothered tone. Thanks. Maybe you can enroll her in. Gustav suddenly paused as he sensed something. E noticed the strange look on his face and voiced, What? Gustav squinted his eyes before speaking. Are you expecting visitors? What? I am in. Before E could properly respond, a loud bang resonated across the building. With it came the appearance of two MBO officers. One of them was a face E was familiar with, having seen her that day. Sorry about not using the door. You see, I had to visit uninvited. A feminine but husky voice laced with naughtiness drifted into his ears. General Reyna. He gulped saliva while staring at the hole they made through the window that led to his balcony area. E turned to face where Gustav was seated, only to see that it was empty. Why would you barge into my place like this, General Reyna? This is totally uncalled for. He immediately regained his confidence and began berating her. It is inappropriate. A traitor shouldn't be stripped of their rights to complain. General Reyna took slow steps towards E while speaking. What are you talking about, General? E questioned with a befuddled expression. Don't play stupid. You and I are very much aware that the Universal Fugitive has been on Earth for some time. And guess who accommodated him during his stay here? General Gustav spoke while giving E a very intense glare. I don't know what you're talking about, General. The appearance of the Universal Fugitive was confirmed to be a clone, as we all know. E continued to play it off as completely clueless. Yes, we all know about that. But what everyone doesn't know is that the real Gustav faced the clone and most likely faced the world's strongest as well. This is why the clone is nowhere to be found. Because he was involved in its disappearance, General Reyna began to walk in circles around E. But you knew this, didn't you? A smirk appeared on her face at this moment. Why would I know that, General? Besides, all these are assumptions. The identity of that person is unknown. E was screaming internally but managed to keep a calm face. Sigh, you really want to keep playing around, eh? She stood before E and placed her index finger on his chin. You know, I'm giving you the chance to share the glory with me. Just hand him over, she demanded. Ahem, E reached out to grab her finger and slowly took it off his chin. Like I said, General, I don't know what you're talking about. If you believe what you're spouting so much, you're free to search my place. Oh, is that so? General Reyna took a step back. Have at it. He was a bit on edge due to how suddenly the whole situation had unraveled, but he did his best to keep his composure. General Reyna turned to face Officer Gohan, who had been standing behind the entire time. He shook his head as if in response to a silent question she had thrown at him. Her face bore an indescribable expression as she looked around. Who is this person? I never knew you lived with someone. General Reyna turned to face Cersei, who was seated on the sofa at the other end. She is a distant cousin. Is my relative not allowed to stay with me? Or is that some treacherous crime? He asked with a rhetorical tone while moving closer to Cersei. Cersei was smart enough not to engage in the ongoing dialogue. She only smiled in response and sat quietly in place. General Reyna had a dissatisfied look on her face as she began to walk around the apartment. Officer Gohan remained at his initial spot while a green glow appeared in his eyes. General Reyna returned to the living room after a few seconds. You really want hand him over? The offer to share the glory of turning him in still stands, she said to Yi with budding frustration. Yi knew well that so long as General Reyna was unable to physically locate Gustav, she really couldn't do anything. General Reyna seemed to be scanning the premises with her senses, but couldn't come up with anything even after minutes had passed. She thought her mind could be playing tricks on her, and even visited different spots within the apartment physically. All to no avail. I'll give you a piece of advice now. I better not find out that his presence on Earth is linked to you in any way, or you will be sorry. She looked Yi dead in the eye and unleashed a bit of her energy. Beta ranked, she's on the same rank with Gus. Yi was a bit worried but stood his ground. There won't be anything to be sorry about, General. I don't harbor criminals, Yi voiced in response. Puffed. General Reyna scoffed while walking away. Make sure you contact me if you decide to change your mind about joining me to turn him in, she stated from the balcony area, sounding almost 100% certain about her claim. What are you doing, Gohan? Let's go, she yelled to Gohan, who was still standing in place. Gohan's green, glowing eyes dimmed as he spoke. He was lying. What? General Reyna voiced in confusion. That girl isn't his cousin. I searched the records with my mind, connecting all his families all across the earth. From parents to uncles, to aunts to cousins to grandparents, all of them. I saw it all, dead and alive. Officer E is not related in any way to this girl. Officer Gohan pointed at Cersei with a look of suspicion. Shit. E yelled internally while gulping saliva. Well, you see. I've got nothing. E was a terrible liar, so he was having difficulty coming up with a tangible explanation that wouldn't make the situation seem more suspicious. She actually happens to be my neighbor's daughter, you see? My neighbor is not indoors at the moment, so she decided to wait here. I don't want things to look off with some random girl in my apartment when I have a girlfriend. That's why I said she is my cousin. He did as quickly as he could to piece his lie to the best of his abilities. Your cousin, your neighbor. A smile appeared on General Reyna's face as she began to walk towards E. What lie are you going to spin next? Your sister's friend? She added with both a sarcastic and serious tone mixed. Damn. Maybe I should have used that one. E nearly face-palmed. Chapter 1427. Interesting coincidence? Damn. Maybe I should have used that one. Ida nearly face-palmed. I still do not understand what you're talking about, General. Why is the girl a problem exactly? She isn't who you came here to find. Yet he decided to stop mentioning relatives or any other excuse and outright played coy. True, she isn't the one I am looking for. General Reyna arrived before he once more and stared into his eyes briefly. But maybe she has connections to him. Immediately after adding, she turned to the side and started walking towards Cersei. You don't mind if I ask her a few questions, do you? General Reyna emitted an intimidating presence while approaching. Without a warrant or anything that advocates a crime. Isn't that against her rights? Idati voiced with a tone that slightly hinted at trepidation. Just a few, friendly, simple questions. Nothing much. Unless there is something to hide, General Reyna turned slightly to shoot a glance. Ha. Knock yourself out, General. Idati laughed wryly. I don't like where this is going. He screamed internally. General Reyna proceeded to bring out a holographic tab which displayed a picture of Gustav. Have you seen this person before? She questioned with a keen gaze. Bang. Bang. Boom. Powerful ripples spread across the air due to an ongoing battle between a trio, Fwish, after images could be spotted in the skies as they engaged one another powerfully. Blasts often rang out, and despite being distant from the surface, the icy terrain would occasionally split and shatter from the residual energy. No normal person could witness the ongoing battle due to their unparalleled speed as they bolted across the skies. However, on closer look, it was a 2 versus 1 battle. The figure in the middle was continuously deflecting blows from the other two, and appeared to be doing it rather easily. One of the two had his arms covered in rocks as he repeatedly threw fierce jabs at the figure in the middle. Bang! 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 The figure in between swayed his hands causally, slapping the fists away before they made contact. His arms looked like they were moving 1,000,000 times in just 1 second. Bang! He slapped the one covered in rocks away, sending him hurling across the air. Bam! 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 He slammed into the icy surface below, sliding across it and forming wide crevices due to the force of the attack. Meanwhile, the other one, whose attack had also been repeatedly getting deflected, now had to face the figure with dark hair alone. "Thanks for doing this, Sir Jack," he voiced in gratitude before opening his eyes. "Not a problem. I was starting to get bored here anyways," Jack responded with a smile as he stared at the multiple twinkling colors in the eyes of the 7 feet, 5 inches youngster with silver hair. Before him, Jack's smile suddenly vanished the moment the world before him lost all color. He felt the space around him bending and contrasting in a very eerie manner, while the youngster across from him was the only being with color. "Impressive." Jack's smile returned as he praised. "Not impressive enough if you're still smiling." Eldris's silver hair floated as he raised his index finger, which had a swirling mass of numerous colors above it, waving it forward slightly. The swirling mass sped towards Jack, who responded by thrusting a palm forward. Whoosh! A star-patterned construct materialized into existence, fighting against the colorless domain as it flickered occasionally with colors. Like a switch turning off and on, the construct collided with the swirling mass of multiple colors, causing a massive blackness to form upon merging. "Thank you," Eldris smiled while spreading his palms apart. "Pa!" The moment he clasped his hands together, an incredibly immense suction force was generated from the dark mass. With such powerful suction force, even the earth should have been swallowed up in an instant. However, this suction force only seemed to affect Jack, who found himself unable to fight against it. "This is ridiculous," he voiced internally as the black swirling mass pulled him into its center and formed restraints that held him in place. "Now!" Eldris yelled. Boom! A loud explosion rang out from underneath as the icy terrain ruptured and a figure sped upwards with such immense force that it tore a line across the sky. A tempest accompanied by a flaming mountain of ice and volcanic magma trailed across the air with unbridled intensity. Behind it was Rhea, who stomped onto the bottom, sending it spiraling at the restrained Jack. Boom! A deafening collision reverberated across the vicinity, bringing with it harsh winds that blew everything away. Rhea and Eldris included. Shockwaves spread across the air, turning miles of the icy terrain beneath to water. Everyone within a 500-mile radius could feel the earth quaking intensely, like it was about to give way. The battle was being fought in the sky, and yet it had greatly affected the surface beneath. "Did we get him?" Rhea voiced from below, being the strongest mixed blood in existence. "You know the answer to that." Eldris smiled wryly. Not long after, Jack appeared in the distance where the skies were completely void of clouds. The last blast had blown them all away. He floated in place, practically unscathed except for a few cuts on his clothes. Why is he so overpowered? Rhea felt like all his months of seclusion had been thrown down the drain. "Ha ha ha, come on, Rhea. Even Gustav would be unable to win," Eldris reminded him from the side. "But he's not even injured. I trained for so long and I'm still so weak," Rhea voiced with a tone of defeat. Jack's figure suddenly vanished, reappearing before Rhea in the next instant. "You're not weak." Jack raised his palm to show Rhea that it was scalded. "You're just up against me. Some alphas would be unable to cause me even the tiniest bit of damage, so don't sell yourself short." Jack patted Rhea's shoulder. "Really?" Rhea's face suddenly lit up in excitement. "Of course. I'd say you're powerful enough to contend with a beta-ranked mixed blood, and being that powerful at such a young age means that you will be stronger than me when you're my age. Jack smiled while floating upwards. I'll give you 2 for effort. At least you made me use a pretty high level of strength to not only get out of that restraint but also block your attack. Jack turned around to fly away after revealing, "Thank you." Rhea yelled, but he was already gone. Praise from the world's strongest. Today is not a bad day. Eldris descended while speaking. How did you do that trap thing? Rhea questioned with a hint of curiosity. Oh, that. I just bound his energy to my attack and used it to lure his essence and merge him into it. No one should be able to get out of that restraint so long as they attack it instead of evading, Eldris explained. But he got out of it, Rhea said with a tone of confoundment. He is Jack Sherwin. Within Idadi's apartment, General Reyna stared down at Cersei, who kept answering all her questions with no duh. So you've never seen Gustav Crimson before? You don't know who he is and you have no connection to him? General Reyna voiced with her tone rising every second. Cersei shook her head in response. General, you said this was going to be friendly and brief. Would you please stop harassing the poor girl? Idadi voiced from the side with a tone of annoyance. General Reyna wore a smile and stood upright before turning around. I have checked. There is nothing, Gohan voiced from the side. No records, no birth certificate, no database whatsoever on this young girl. It's like she just appeared out of thin air, he added. How intriguing. Coming into existence around the same period Gustav Crimson is suspected to be on Earth. What an interesting coincidence indeed. General Reyna gazed at it briefly to note his reaction. He was quiet, seemingly racking his brain on how to respond to her. Since someone that doesn't exist is currently in here, I guess it wouldn't be what I do to her now, would it? General Reyna suddenly reached out at that moment to grab Cersei. General Reyna, what are you doing? Idadi yelled while strutting forward, but before he could get close, Gohan threw a glowing icy cube towards the floor before him. Thrin, a triangular barrier of light, suddenly surrounded Idadi, trapping him in place. You use spatial abilities, right? That will keep you from interfering for a while. General Reyna smiled while watching Idadi bang the walls of the barrier constantly. He tried to conjure a vortex, but to no avail. General Reyna drove a fist into Saras's belly at that moment, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Cersei, let her go, you witch, Idadi voiced out in anguish. Just stay in there and don't interfere. General Reyna turned to face Cersei once more before raising her. I'm only dealing with someone who shouldn't exist. Immediately after saying that, she threw another punch forward. Enough? Chapter 1428. This is the end for you. He tried to conjure a vortex, but to no avail. Cersei's eyes lit up with an azure glow as frost spread from her figure to the surroundings, turning the apartment into an icy domain in an instant. General Reyna's arm, which was connected to Cersei's neck, got frozen as well. Cersei freed herself from the general's clutches and conjured a bunch of icicles from midair. She waved her hand forward, causing the icicles to shoot toward the triangular prison. He was restrained in. Bam! 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 The icicles did a bit of damage, causing the triangular prison to flicker a bit, but it didn't manage to destroy it. She conjured more, but just as she was about to send them hurling forward, a loud shattering sound rang out behind her. Cersei turned around to see a hand reaching for her throat. Cool. She groaned in pain as General Reyna, who was unscathed, grabbed her by the throat and raised her like a weak, little chick. Cersei held General Reyna's arm in a bid to force it away from her throat, but to no avail. Frost spread from her hand to General Reyna's arm and even her entire body, but the moment her eyes emitted a crimson glow, the ice shattered once more. Nice trick with the frost, but this level of ice is not nearly enough to hold me. General Reyna drove a fist into Cersei's belly, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Bang! The entire building quaked from the strength of the punch, causing the already shattered window in the apartment to blast into more pieces as Cersei's belly caved in. Kirch! A wave of pain spread across her entire body as she struggled to breathe from the impact of the punch. Cersei, let her go, you witch, Idadi voiced out in anguish. Just stay in there and don't interfere. General Reyna turned to face Cersei once more while keeping her feet above the floor. I'm only dealing with someone who shouldn't exist. Immediately after saying that, she threw another punch forward. Enough. A masculine voice resonated within the apartment like a heavenly mandate. It was soft and hard at the same time. Rippling across the surroundings with authority, General Reyna found herself unable to drive the punch forward any further as she heard the voice. Gohan, who was still shivering from Cersei's frost, stared at the figure in their midst with utter disbelief. Gustav crimson. General Reyna turned around in shock as well. Where? However, there was no one behind her. She felt her left hand lighten and turned to peer forward again, only to realize that Cersei had been released from her clutches. Gustav carried Cersei in princess style after putting a healing med in her mouth. You're truly here. On Earth? I knew it. She voiced in excitement. She noticed that she was free to move her hands again and tried to grab a communication device from her storage. Kneel. Gustav voiced. General Reyna suddenly had the unfathomable urge to go on her knees. What is happening? Her voice cracked while she tried to resist. Meanwhile, on the other end, Gohan had fallen to his knees already. He wasn't spared as well. He fell forward and his knees kissed the floors of the apartment. You can't resist the command of a cosmic superior being. Gustav sounded like he was giving a divine mandate, one that couldn't be resisted by the likes of mere mortals. Now, kneel. He added, the urge suddenly increased by tenfold, forcing General Reyna to her knees. Bam! The device in her grasp fell to the floor and slid over to Gustav's side. He carefully placed Cersei on another sofa and headed back toward General Reyna. He kicked the communication device away as he trotted forward and stopped the moment he arrived before General Reyna's kneeling figure. A detached sofa appeared directly before her struggling frame. Gustav took a seat with an unbothered expression while crossing his legs. I heard you were looking for me. Well, here I am, he stated calmly. The place descended into complete silence with General Reyna struggling to gain control of her body. What? Cat's got your tongue? Gustav leaned forward a little while asking, You wanted me? I'm right in front of you. Now, say something. A sadistic grin suddenly appeared on Gustav's face at that moment. Oh, that's right. You can't. Be at ease, Gustav commanded. Every one of them suddenly felt the pressure vanish. He quickly jumped to his feet while yelling, Come on, man. I'm here too. My bad. Gustav flicked his index finger forward. A small torrent of invisible waves shot toward the triangular prison. Bang. It shattered instantly. Freeing wasted no time in scampering towards Gustav and standing behind him. Meanwhile, General Reyna remained in place, breathing in and out profusely. How was he capable of such? With just his words? She slowly raised her head and met Gustav's eyes. Gustav stared back at her and with a smirk. I know what you're thinking, he stated. If only you could get to that and tap on the emergency button quick enough. This place would be stormed by tens of MBO operatives, and I'd be taken into custody. You'll get rewarded and possibly promoted too. You just need to get to it and tap a button before I strip your body of its free will again. Gustav narrated while pointing at the corner where the communicative device was positioned. That's not what I'm thinking. General Reyna finally spoke. I'm thinking. Zinzin, immense bloodline energy suddenly burst forth from her figure as she vanished from her spot. Eyes widened in disbelief, seeing as she had escaped. But in the next instant, bam! Her figure reappeared in the balcony area. Arf! Her loud scream resonated across the place as she tried to claw her way forward. It was at that moment that he noticed that half of her body was missing. The missing half that held her legs was right in the living room with them. A sea of scarlet liquid was splurging from her lower half as she pulled her torso forward with a look that showed that she was in excruciating pain. What the fuck just happened? Edith was utterly confused. She tried to escape, so I cut off her legs, Gustav answered. Her entire lower half is gone, man. Edith pointed, looking disgusted. Potato, Gustav mumbled. But I didn't see you move. Edith was still in disbelief. Well, my full strength already returned, so That's quite normal, Gustav shrugged. She's trying to go. He pointed at General Reyna, who was still clawing her way forward. Gohan, bring her back in here, Gustav said to the other MBO officer who was frozen in a spot with fear. Yes, sir. Sweat dabbled down his face as his legs vibrated tremendously with every step he took. You already know what happens if you try to escape, so. Gustav cautioned Gohan, who had arrived at the balcony area. With how frightened Gohan was, the last thing on his mind was escaping. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. Damn it. I should never have come with her. Gohan was screaming internally while dragging General Reyna's figure toward the living room. The trail of blood decorated the floor, causing he to stare at Gustav with a look of disapproval. My rug is stained. He retched in disgust. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. After I'm done with these two, Gustav reassured him. I know you're in a lot of pain, however. I want you to listen to me and answer my questions. Who else did you tell of my suspected presence on Earth? Gustav questioned with an intense gaze. No, body, she answered while writhing in immense agony. Tell me the truth, Gustav demanded. It is true, Gohan stated from behind. Gustav's face rose as he shot Gohan a glance. Gohan felt chills spread across his body, causing him to gulp saliva in distress. She wanted to keep all the glory of catching you to herself, so she refused to let anyone else know of her suspicion. Gohan rambled on as if his life depended on it. Truthfully, it did. What a greedy woman. Gustav clicked his tongue twice in ridicule. He also thought that she had acted very greedily, but he still felt a little bad for her. You really should have just looked the other way, he stated. So what do you intend to do with them? Idari questioned Gustav. The midget is lucky. He is quite weak, so I can extract his memories. But for this one, Gustav stared at General Reyna. This is the end for you. Immediately after blurting it out, Gustav raised his left hand. Atomic disintegration has been activated. Goodbye, General. A swirling mass of milky-colored energy materialized above his palm. Chapter 1429, Interesting Coincidence? Damn, maybe I should have used that one. E nearly face-palmed. I still do not understand what you're talking about, General. Why is the girl a problem exactly? She isn't who you came here to find. E decided to stop mentioning relatives or any other excuse and outright played coy. True, she isn't the one I am looking for. General Reyna arrived before E once more and stared into his eyes briefly. But maybe she has connections to him. Immediately after adding, she turned to the side and started walking towards Cersei. You don't mind if I ask her a few questions, do you? General Reyna emitted an intimidating presence while approaching. Without a warrant or anything that advocates a crime, isn't that against her rights? E voiced with a tone that slightly hinted at trepidation. Just a few, friendly, simple questions. Nothing much, unless there is something to hide. General Reyna turned slightly to shoot E a glance. Haha, knock yourself out, General. E laughed wryly. I don't like where this is going, E screamed internally. General Reyna proceeded to bring out a holographic tab which displayed a picture of Gustav. Have you seen this person before? She questioned with a keen gaze. Bang, bang, boom. Powerful ripples spread across the air due to an ongoing battle between a trio. Fwish, after images could be spotted in the skies as they engaged one another powerfully. Blasts often rang out, and despite being distant from the surface, the icy terrain would occasionally split and shatter from the residual energy. No normal person could witness the ongoing battle due to their unparalleled speed as they bolted across the skies. However, on closer look, it was a 2 versus 1 battle. The figure in the middle was continuously deflecting blows from the other two, and appeared to be doing it rather easily. One of the two had his arms covered in rocks as he repeatedly threw fierce jabs at the figure in the middle. Bang, bang, bang. The figure in between swayed his hands causally, slapping the fists away before they made contact. His arms looked like they were moving 1,000,000 times in just 1 second. Bang. He slapped the one covered in rocks away, sending him hurling across the air. Bam, bam, Bam! He slammed into the icy surface below, sliding across it and forming wide crevices due to the force of the attack. Meanwhile, the other one whose attack had also been repeatedly getting deflected now had to face the figure with dark hair alone. Really? Ria's face suddenly lit up in excitement. Of course. I'd say you're powerful enough to contend with a betranked mixed blood, and being that powerful at such a young age means that you will be stronger than me when you're my age. Jack smiled while floating upwards. We'll give you 2 for effort. At least you made me use a pretty high level of strength to not only get out of that restraint, but also block your attack. Jack turned around to fly away after revealing. Thank you. Ria yelled, but he was already gone. Praise from the world's strongest. Today is not a bad day. Eldris descended while speaking. How did you do that trapped thing? Ria questioned with a hint of curiosity. Oh, that. I just bound his energy to my attack and used it to lure his essence and merge him into it. No one should be able to get out of that restraint so long as they attack it instead of evading, Eldris explained. But he got out of it, Ria said with a tone of confoundment. He is Jack Sherwin. Within EES apartment, General Reyna stared down at Cersei, who kept answering all her questions with no. So you've never seen Gustav Crimson before? You don't know who he is, and you have no connection to him? General Reyna voiced with her tone rising every second. Cersei shook her head in response. General, you said this was going to be friendly and brief. Would you please stop harassing the poor girl? He voiced from the side with a tone of annoyance. General Reyna wore a smile and stood upright before turning around. I have checked, there is nothing, Gohan voiced from the side. No records, no birth certificate, no database whatsoever on this young girl. It's like she just appeared out of thin air, he added. How intriguing, coming into existence around the same period Gustav Crimson is suspected to be on Earth. What an interesting coincidence indeed. General Reyna gazed at EE briefly to note his reaction. EE was quiet, seemingly racking his brain on how to respond to her. Since someone that doesn't exist is currently in here, I guess it wouldn't be what I do to her now, would it? General Reyna suddenly reached out at that moment to grab Cersei. General Reyna, what are you doing? He yelled while strutting forward, but before he could get close, Gohan threw a glowing icy cube towards the floor before him. Thrin, a triangular barrier of light, suddenly surrounded EE, trapping him in place. You use spatial abilities, right? That will keep you from interfering for a while. General Reyna smiled while watching He banged the walls of the barrier constantly. He tried to conjure a vortex, but to no avail. General Reyna drove a fist into Sarah's belly at that moment, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Cersei, let her go, you witch. He voiced out in anguish. Just stay in there and don't interfere. General Reyna turned to face Cersei once more before raising her. I'm only dealing with someone who shouldn't exist. Immediately after saying that, she threw another punch forward. Enough? Chapter 1430. This is the end for you. He tried to conjure a vortex, but to no avail. Cersei's eyes lit up with an azure glow as frost spread from her figure to the surroundings, turning the apartment into an icy domain in an instant. General Reyna's arm, which was connected to Cersei's neck, got frozen as well. Cersei freed herself from the general's clutches and conjured a bunch of icicles from mid-air. She waved her hand forward, causing the icicles to shoot toward the triangular prison he was restrained in. Bam, bam, bam. The icicles did a bit of damage, causing the triangular prison to flicker a bit, but it didn't manage to destroy it. She conjured more, but just as she was about to send them hurling forward, a loud shattering sound rang out behind her. Cersei turned around to see a hand reaching for her throat. Kuh! She groaned in pain as General Reyna, who was unscathed, grabbed her by the throat and raised her like a weak, little chick. Cersei held General Reyna's arm in a bid to force it away from her throat, but to no avail. Frost spread from her hand to General Reyna's arm and even her entire body, but the moment her eyes emitted a crimson glow, the ice shattered once more. Nice trick with the frost, but this level of ice is not nearly enough to hold me. General Reyna drove a fist into Cersei's belly, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Bang! The entire building quaked from the strength of the punch, causing the already shattered window in the apartment to blast into more pieces as Cersei's belly caved in. Kirch! A wave of pain spread across her entire body as she struggled to breathe from the impact of the punch. Cersei, let her go, you witch. E voiced out in anguish. Just stay in there and don't interfere. General Reyna turned to face Cersei once more while keeping her feet above the floor. I'm only dealing with someone who shouldn't exist. Immediately after saying that, she threw another punch forward. Enough. A masculine voice resonated within the apartment like a heavenly mandate. It was soft and hard at the same time, rippling across the surroundings with authority. General Reyna found herself unable to drive the punch forward any further as she heard the voice. Gohan, who was still shivering from Cersei's frost, stared at the figure in their midst with utter disbelief. Gustav crimson. General Reyna turned around in shock as well. Where? However, there was no one behind her. She felt her left hand lighten and turned to peer forward again, only to realize that Cersei had been released from her clutches. Gustav carried Cersei in princess style after putting a healing med in her mouth. You're truly here, on Earth. I knew it. She voiced in excitement. She noticed that she was free to move her hands again and tried to grab a communication device from her storage. Kneel, Gustav voiced. Arf. Her loud scream resonated across the place as she tried to claw her way forward. It was at that moment that E noticed that half of her body was missing. The missing half that held her legs was right in the living room with them. A sea of scarlet liquid was splurging from her lower half as she pulled her torso forward with a look that showed that she was in excruciating pain. What the fuck just happened? E was utterly confused. She tried to escape, so I cut off her legs, Gustav answered. Her entire lower half is gone, man. E pointed, looking disgusted. Potato, Gustav mumbled. But I didn't see you move. E was still in disbelief. Well, my full strength already returned, so that's quite normal, Gustav shrugged. She's trying to go. E pointed at General Reyna, who was still clawing her way forward. Gohan, bring her back in here, Gustav said to the other MBO officer who was frozen in a spot with fear. Yes, sir. Sweat dabbled down his face as his legs vibrated tremendously with every step he took. You already know what happens if you try to escape, so Gustav cautioned Gohan, who had arrived at the balcony area. With how frightened Gohan was, the last thing on his mind was escaping. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. Damn it. I should never have come with her. Gohan was screaming internally while dragging General Reyna's figure toward the living room. A trail of blood decorated the floor, causing E to stare at Gustav with a look of disapproval. My rug is stained, ugh. He retched in disgust. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. After I'm done with these two, Gustav reassured him. I know you're in a lot of pain, however. I want you to listen to me and answer my questions. Who else did you tell of my suspected presence on Earth? Gustav questioned with an intense gaze. No. Body, she answered while writhing in immense agony. Tell me the truth, Gustav demanded. It is true, Gohan stated from behind. Gustav's face rose as he shot Gohan a glance. Gohan felt chills spread across his body, causing him to gulp saliva in distress. She wanted to keep all the glory of catching you to herself, so she refused to let anyone else know of her suspicion. Gohan rambled on as if his life depended on it. Truthfully, it did. What a greedy woman. Gustav clicked his tongue twice in ridicule. He also thought that she had acted very greedily, but he still felt a little bad for her. You really should have just looked the other way, he stated. So what do you intend to do with them? Questioned Gustav. The midget is lucky. He is quite weak, so I can extract his memories. But for this one, Gustav stared at General Reyna. This is the end for you. Immediately after blurting it out, Gustav raised his left hand. Atomic disintegration has been activated. Goodbye, General. A swirling mass of milky-colored energy materialized above his palm. The spacecraft pulsated with energy as lightning-like discharges struck the shields, illuminating the spacecraft in a spectral dance of light and shadows. As the ship rumbled and drew closer, Gustav suddenly pushed the jump control panel. The spacecraft turned into a streak of light that shot through the storm of energy, penetrating its center on a subatomic level. Emerging from the storm, the spacecraft appeared in a part of space that seemed much more stable compared to where they had been earlier. Rhea let out a sigh of relief when he noticed the stability of the vicinity. "We are not completely out of the blue yet," Gustav announced. "What? We've been at this for nearly 4 days now," Rhea uttered in disbelief. "That's why it's called Dead Man Zone. No spacecraft manages to maneuver past this part of space successfully," Gustav responded. "And why exactly did we pass here again?" Rhea questioned. "It's the fastest way to where we're headed," Eldris answered from the side. I think I'd prefer the long way so long as we don't get turned to mush," Rhea stated with a look of disapproval. "Yeah, only that it would take us at least 4 months of journeying through space," Indrik pointed out from up ahead. "I take it back," Rhea voiced with droopy eyes. "Don't worry, in another day or 2 we'll be out of it. Afterward, we just need to travel for another 5 days before getting to our destination," Gustav said with a tone of assurance. "Well, cut back on over 3 months," Indrik added. "If we don't die first," Rhea sighed. "Ha ha ha." The group burst into laughter. "You'll be seeing why it is called the Dead Man Zone soon. But no worries, we'll scale through," Gustav voiced amidst chuckles. They continued for another day without having any mishaps. Their journey through space gave them a feeling of nostalgia, taking them back to when it was done together as a group. It was quite disheartening that more than half of the group couldn't join them on the endeavor, but after getting the details it made sense to Eldris why Gustav wouldn't want anyone joining. "So, this place, you say, connects across galaxies because it is located at a focal point in outer space that makes it everywhere and nowhere at the same time?" Eldris questioned, sounding slightly confused. "That is what the mundane one told us," Indrik answered. "I am not sure I get it." Rhea shook his head, and for once Eldris was on the same page with him. Some things in the universe are never going to make sense. But basically what the mundane one means is, we are journeying to the center of the universe. How do they know that it is the center of the universe? Beats me too. Gustav proceeded to give a brief explanation. The planet that exists in that location is desolate and on the brink of utter desiccation. It exists in such a manner that it touches all planes of reality and connects to every reach of the universe. Due to that, it is everywhere and nowhere at the same time, he added. And that is the reason we can use it to get to Angie and Falco, Rhea voiced in realization. Pretty much. I see. Eldris still had a contemplative look on his face as they kept journeying. You do know that this action may bring you face to face with him, right? The system questioned in Gustav's mind. I knew that from the moment I decided to embark on this journey, Gustav answered internally. You're not powerful enough to face him, you know? He could snuff you out of existence with just a single breathe, the system cautioned. Oh, so now we can talk about him? Didn't you say that could cause consequences? Gustav scoffed internally. We're closer to the due periods of your quests, so yes, we can talk about him to an extent now without causing problems, the system answered. Whatever. I don't intend to face him yet anyway. Well, just grab Angie and Falco and get out of there before they realize it, Gustav voiced internally. Overconfident much? I'd rather be that than underconfident. That is not a word. Shut up. The system went silent. Gustav pushed a button and the spacecraft sped up, attracting the attention of the two behind. What's up again? Rhea voiced while peering straight ahead. We're about to face another energy storm, Gustav announced. Just when I thought we were past this, Rhea glued his bum to his seat tightly. Nah, this is going to be the worst one, Gustav chuckled briefly. You are about to find out why it is called the Dead Man Zone. Rhea's eyes widened as he spotted the sea of violent energy swimming across space with incredible destructiveness. Unlike the previous ones they had encountered, it covered their entire line of sight, looming over them like it was about to swallow everything up. It was like an enormous net, with each string, the size of a planet that would obliterate anything upon contact. And just like nets, there were little spaces in between. However, Were those spaces large enough for their spacecraft to fit? Chapter 1432, The Pursuit of the Faceless One. Just like nets, there were little spaces in between, but were these spaces large enough for their spacecraft to fit? How was the spacecraft going to get through that? Rhea yelled in terror. It was very obvious that the little spaces were not wide enough for them to pass through without getting obliterated. To make matters worse, the throngs of violent torrents were moving and swimming, almost like they were alive. That's the trick. It can't, Gustav answered Rhea. Then how are we going to survive? Rhea didn't know what Gustav playing at, but he internally decided to curse Gustav if he said we want. We will. Gustav drove head-on for it, unwavering in the slightest. Unlike Rhea, Ildris wasn't bothered because he had full trust in Gustav. However, he was just as intrigued as Rhea was about Gustav's plans. Can't we just hyper-jump through it? Ildris inquired. It won't work. The energy torrent is like strings. No matter how strong the hyperjump is, the moment it goes through, the violent energy will keep pulling it back to its center until it runs out of juice. Once that happens and the spacecraft rematerializes, we will be toast, Gustav explained. Oh, Ildris nodded in apprehension. Indrik, take command. Gustav suddenly got up and moved towards the back. Indrik's seat moved to the middle of the control panel, and he began to steer forward. At that moment, they directly arrived before the net of energy, and just as it seemed like they were about to collide with it. Atomic manipulation has been activated. Zian, Gustav's whole figure emitted a milky glow that spread across the entirety of the spacecraft. Thwurich, the spacecraft flickered multiple times before dematerializing atom by atom. The spacecraft became see-through along with everyone within as they phased through the net of thronging destructive energy. The strings were passing through them like they were in astral form as they cruised through. Indrik navigated the spacecraft to increase in speed while Gustav made sure to concentrate on keeping things the way they were. They still had a long way to go in this world of destructiveness, but couldn't deny that it looked quite amazing. The spark of colors and ripples of cosmic energy that merged into one another created a mesmerizing display for them to feast their eyes on. The endearing term beauty is dangerous had never been more true until that moment. Despite how marvelous the sight was, anyone and anything would be obliterated in an instant if they went close enough. The journey through the violent net of energy lasted for almost an entire day. By the time they successfully navigated through, Gustav had expended a lot of energy. Fortunately, they were now in the clear, so it was all worth it. We're out of the dead man zone. Gustav let out a heavy breath after announcing. That was both enlightening and terrifying at the same time, Rhea stated, slightly mesmerized. I agree, truly never felt anything like that in all my life. All those colors, Ildris voiced with a look of interest. He wished he could have absorbed them, but he knew it would mess with their navigation, so he couldn't risk it. At least, it's gonna be smooth sailing henceforth, Indrik stated from up ahead. I'm not so sure about that, Gustav suddenly voiced with an ominous tone. Huh. What is that? Is that a? Yes, it's a person. Gustav confirmed their suspicions on what lay in front of them. Hundreds of kilometers before their spacecraft was a figure floating in outer space without so much as a space gear or anything to help them breathe. They just floated in place with glowing crimson hair that looked like the branches of a tree. The person commanded their attention because of the multiple traits, but Gustav wasn't interested in knowing who they might be. He pushed the throttle forward after the spacecraft engines cooled a bit, causing them to sail in a straight line with immense speed. Common sense told them that a being floating and breathing in space with glowing hair wasn't a weak person. It was better to leave immediately than to be sorry later. In just an instant, they had crossed light years of distance, leaving the unknown far behind. Or so they thought. Din, 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 hostile force in pursuit. Squinting eyes face. Activating energy shield, alarms suddenly began blurring within the spacecraft as a silver-colored energy shield appeared around it. What the hell? Rhea yelled in shock. It's that person? Indrik stared at the holographic projection that displayed the rear position of their spacecraft. Not too distant behind them was a crimson blur streaking across space with unparalleled speed. Upon closer look, The crimson blur turned out to be the same person they had spotted after getting out of the dead man zone. Indrik and Rhea couldn't believe their eyes as they saw how quickly the humanoid-shaped being was flying. They were moving faster than the speed of light, and yet it was starting to catch up with them. Whoever it was, they were definitely no ordinary being. Gustav couldn't chase a spacecraft and catch up to it at his current level of strength, so the person was no doubt more powerful. Only Miss Amy could successfully pull something like that off. "Buckle up," Gustav yelled while tapping on multiple buttons at a time. He was preparing to activate hyperjump since it was becoming difficult to outrun the being currently in pursuit. "What if the person is friendly?" Rhea questioned from behind. "Maybe I can kick you out so you two can have a friendly chat then, far from the rest of us," Gustav retorted with all seriousness. Silence. "I don't know what he wants, but I certainly don't want to stick around to find out," Ildris stated. "Me neither," Gustav added. "Jump now," Indrik suddenly yelled. Chapter 1433, Unexpected Setback. Indrik stood to his feet and pointed at the holographic projection that displayed the faceless image. "Notice the branch-like hair?" he questioned. "Yeah, what about it?" Rhea voiced. "You see, their hair is actually a tree. Over time it has been called many names. The tree of creation, the tree of birth, the tree of life, and so on." Rhea kept staring at Indrik with curiosity, wondering where he was headed with his explanation. "The thing is, this tree can bear fruits. When they pluck one of these fruits and consume it, it grants a random ability for a particular duration." Indrik's explanation left Rhea agape. "So you're saying that they can technically make use of any ability?" Rhea inquired. "Yes, but not just that. They get the random ability scaled to a very high level depending on the age of the faceless one, and these are pretty old, so you can already guess just how strong an ability will be when they gain them. Not to mention that it sticks for an even longer duration with them," Indrik added with a grave tone. "So this faceless one must have gained an ability that helped them locate us," Ildris mumbled in understanding. "It makes sense now." Rhea leaned back looking bothered. "But what happens when they run out of time? With abilities like that, they must be getting jumped all the time. I mean, who wouldn't want to eat a fruit that would give you a random ability?" Rhea thought about the possibilities. You'll die if you ate from one of the fruits on their hair," Indrik pointed out. "What?" Rhea's eyes widened. "It only works for them. Should someone else try to eat a fruit from them, they would explode to pieces and die," Indrik iterated. Rhea felt like Indrik had just burst his bubble. He couldn't help but think it was such a waste. If he or she or it found us before, they can certainly find us again. "So, what do we do?" Rhea asked. "They won't find us before we get Falco and Angie out of there. We can be 2 galaxies away after we get that done," Gustav answered from up ahead. "Yeah, but we can't keep running, can we? This is a faceless one we're talking about," Indrik voiced from the side. It was a lot of trouble having what was considered one of the strongest beings in the universe chasing after them. "At least it isn't the one with cosmic superiority," Gustav chuckled. "Wait, one of them has that cosmic thing like you?" One could almost spell the look of doom on Rhea's face as he questioned. "Go figure," Gustav replied. "We're screwed." "No, we're not. Gustav has a plan, I'm sure," Rhea, Indrik, and Ildris voiced simultaneously. "If I can trigger another meeting, maybe I can talk to the other faceless to get the one chasing us to back off," Gustav stated, but they didn't really get what he meant. "Just keep your pants in a bunch till we're done dealing with the Angie and Falco situation," Gustav added. In the vast, unending expanse of space, where stars and galaxies weave together a twinkling display of the cosmos, a singular, faceless being floated in place. The entity, unlike any known creature, boasted a mane of vivid crimson hair that cascaded and branched out like the limbs of an ancient tree, each strand glowing with the life force of the universe. Amidst the celestial silence, it danced as old as time, conjuring visions with graceful movements. The space around the being warped and pulsed with unseen energies, as if reality itself was bending to its will. Before it, a single strand of crimson hair, identical in hue to its ethereal locks, floated as a focus for its powers. The hair acted as a conductor, a focal point through which the being channeled the display of visions. As the being's unseen eyes fixated on the floating strand, the space around it began to shimmer and change. Visions emerged from the void, enveloping the strand like a series of transparent, floating screens. It tilted in such a sharp and unexpected way that Ria's strap ripped off, and he went flying to the far end of the spacecraft. At the same instant Gustav swerved, space collapsed around their initial spot. With the collapse came the appearance of a faceless being with crimson branch-like hair. It immediately became obvious that Endrik had already seen a premonition of the collision, so he changed their course before it could happen. He is back. What the hell? Eldris and Ria both yelled at the same time in disbelief. I put a lot of distance between us. How did he? Gustav was just as confused as the rest of them. You need to use the hyperjump now, Endrik voiced with an incredibly troubled look. Gustav didn't question him about what he might have seen and swiftly charged up the hyperjump. Tuhushed compared to the last time. The faceless being's pursuit was much faster. He was closing in on the spacecraft more furiously, as though wondering how his plans kept getting messed up. When he was close to making contact, Gustav pushed the hyperjump button. Just like the last time, they ripped through space like a needle, crossing a distance impossible to scale in a short amount of time. In a couple of seconds, they arrived in an entirely different location within space. Phew, we got away, Eldris muttered. You think? Ria voiced with a tone of trepidation. Not for long. I think. Gustav shook his head. I don't know how it keeps finding us. And there is no way he should be able to cross such a distance within a short amount of time. Not even Jack or Miss Amy can do that, Endrik pointed out with a distressed tone. The faceless are not supposed to be able to get the same ability twice in a row after consuming a fruit. It must have another way of doing this, Gustav analyzed with a look of skepticism. So what are we going to do? Ria questioned. We should only be 2 days away from our destination now. Maybe we can get there before he pulls another one of these stunts. Gustav's mind was still majorly centered on saving Angie. Look, Gus. I want to save Angie and Falco as much as you do, but I think that we need to find a way to shake him off our tail permanently, or we might never get the chance to save them, Eldris voiced from behind. Inasmuch as I... Guys, Ria suddenly called out to them shakily. What is it? They all voiced simultaneously. Isn't that? I think I saw that space rock or planet whatnot before. He pointed at a red-hot, glowing orbital body in the distance. The others turned to stare in the direction he pointed, and their eyes widened. We've been here before, Gustav stated with a tone of realization. What exactly is going on? Ria voiced as an ominous feeling spread through the spacecraft. We just got set back by 5 days. Chapter 1434 Stuck in a loop. While it was difficult to tell locations apart in space since the expansion of its reaches was beyond imaginable, there were subtle noticeable hints in the surroundings. Even Ria could spot an orbital body he had seen in the past. Much more Gustav, who never forgot anything or any view. What exactly is going on? Ria voiced as an ominous feeling spread through the spacecraft. We just got set back by 5 days, Gustav answered, sounding perplexed. What do you mean set back by 5 days? Ria questioned, looking baffled. I don't completely understand what you mean as well, Gus. If you're saying what I think you're saying, it shouldn't be possible, Eldris analyzed with a disturbed look. Look at the time on the ship. Gustav pointed at a corner that displayed a calendar. The concept of time was difficult and elusive to understand, especially when one was traveling through space, but the calendar and time display within the spacecraft had been fine-tuned to mirror that of Earth. Before the hyperjump, the time displayed was 3:25, and after the jump, it changed to less than 17:01. The calendar was also 5 days backward, explaining how Gustav got to the conclusion that they had experienced a setback. So we went back to the past? When we just got through the dead man zone? Eldris' voice tinged with apprehension. That's the only explanation, but I don't understand how this happened, Gustav responded from up ahead. It has to be the faceless one. It must have used one of its freakish abilities to do this to us, Ria voiced in horror. It shouldn't be able to send us 5 days back. That sort of time-related ability is unheard of, and the fact that we lost it, What does it gain from? Gustav's eyes suddenly widened. Since we got set back by 5 days, it also means we will bump into the Faceless One again. Gustav came to a sudden realization. He turned the spacecraft west to continue their journey in another direction. That is not the way, is it? Ria questioned. We don't have a choice. For all we know, if we had continued on the same route, we would have bumped into the Faceless One again, and who knows what it might have done differently this time to get us. What if memories from the original timeline stay in its head? It probably won't make the same mistakes as last time. Gustav wasn't willing to risk it. Taking a different route would double the distance of their journey, but he felt it was a better option. In the cold, silent expanse of space, a spacecraft, sleek and angular with a distinctive pentagon shape, glided through the star-speckled darkness. Suddenly, the void itself seemed to pulse, a ripple in the fabric of space and time, heralding the arrival of an extraordinary entity. From the void, the being with the crimson hair emerged. Its appearance was as sudden as a starburst. The mane of vivid, tree-like hair billowed and flowed around it, casting eerie shadows and reflections off the metallic surfaces of the spacecraft. For a moment, the universe held its breath as two vastly different forms of existence confronted each other in the silent vacuum. He found us again? How is he here? I don't know. We passed a different route. The appearance of the Faceless One brought shock to their faces. The spacecraft's sensors flared to life while alarms blared within the cockpit as Gustav pushed the engine to power at full throttle. The spacecraft leaped forward as it attempted to escape the incomprehensible being before it. The Faceless One followed right after without so much as a millisecond's delay. A chase ensued, a spectacle of light and motion. The spacecraft zigzagged through space, utilizing every maneuver in its arsenal, pushing its engines beyond their limits. It darted past asteroids and weaved through debris fields on its path in a desperate attempt to shake off the relentless pursuit. The Faceless One gave chase with an eerie grace, moving through space as if it were but another medium like water or air. It closed the distance between them with ease, unaffected by the physical barriers that impeded the spacecraft. For a moment, it seemed as though the being would overtake the fleeing vessel. Its outstretched tendrils of hair almost brushed against the ship's hull. But Gustav refused to let things end that way. Utilizing a risky slingshot maneuver around a nearby gravitational well, they managed to exponentially increase their velocity, propelling the spacecraft forward with a burst of speed that strained every rivet and panel. Gustav also activated a cannon blast that rippled through space and exploded right before the Faceless One. The Faceless One, caught off guard by the sudden acceleration and the clever use of celestial mechanics, slowed its pursuit. For a moment, it hovered in space. Its crimson hair swirled around it as it contemplated the spacecraft's escape. With an inscrutable gaze, it watched as the pentagon-shaped vessel turned into a needle that streaked into the distance. The spacecraft finally managed to elude its extraordinary pursuer. The Faceless One floated in space silently for a while. Just when it was about to move, something attracted its attention. Drawing a small line with its fingertips that ripped through space like a zipper, the Faceless One put its hand through the rip. It then pulled out a small device and created an air bubble around it. Have you caught the fugitive? A voice came from the device. Skern Vito Walidlai, the Faceless One responded in an unknown tongue that immediately got translated through the device. What a terrible excuse. You said you could control what fruits your tree bears to give you a desirable ability to help capture him, and I provided you with the means to keep bearing the same fruit constantly. Yet you disappoint me. Exlyro miv efko intu leksrodi. Get him if you want to know how to bring new offspring. I have the answer, but if you don't stick to your end of the bargain, you're never getting it. At that moment, the voice from the device vanished, leaving the Faceless One alone within the bubble. A strand of crimson hair that looked a bit similar to his appeared before him. The strand glowed brightly, and the Faceless One started moving strangely. 10 days later, what are we going to do? He keeps finding us, Ria questioned, looking tired. We've been at this for another 10 days, and every time we end up at the same location and time as before, Eldris mumbled in contemplation. 5 days setback. It never goes beyond 5 days before we are returned to that point in space beyond the dead man zone. Indrik was just as troubled as well. That's because we're not necessarily time traveling. I understand what it is now, Gustav stated. They all stared at him, waiting for him to spill, even though Indrik already had an idea of what he was going to say. It's a loop, Gustav revealed. We're stuck in a time loop? Ildris' eyes widened in realization. That is so cool. Ria voiced in excitement, but soon noticed them shooting weird gazes at him. If only we were under better circumstances and we weren't getting chased by one of the strongest beings in the universe. He added with a small cough. How did this even happen? Ildris inquired quietly. We must have walked right into it the moment we got out of the dead man zone, Gustav pointed out firmly. He was waiting for us. I guess the faceless one must have set it up then and we had no idea. Ildris shook his head in disbelief. What we should be concerned about now is getting out of it so our course of time can continue undisturbed, Indrik stated. I can only think of two plausible options. We find the focal point and see if we can undo it, or we face the faceless one, Gustav listed out. Facing the faceless one shouldn't be an option unless we know how to beat him. Ildris shook his head. I can only think of one way of beating him, and it would be unwise of me to do that since the Alliance could track me with it. Gustav decided to put the thought of facing the faceless one to the back of his mind. So we find the focal point then? Ria inquired. It is easier said than done. There is also no guarantee that we will be able to undo it after finding the focal point, Gustav responded in uncertainty. But it is a better option than facing you-know-who, Ria voiced. I suppose it is. Gustav steered the spacecraft around at that moment. Indrik's forehead emitted a green glow as they traveled towards where it all began. You'll have to stop when we reach the region after the dead man zone. I want to try something, Indrik stated. Chapter 1435. Finding the focal point. You'll have to stop when we reach the region after the dead man zone. I want to try something, Indrik stated. Gustav nodded while steering forward undaunted. They needed to escape the clutches of the faceless one, so Gustav was open to any option. Maybe I should try triggering that right now. Gustav set the course for the spacecraft to head to the desired location, and after seeing the number of hours it would take for them to get there, he got off his seat. Where are you going? Ria questioned. To try contacting the other faceless one. I'll be back, Gustav responded while walking off. Soon he arrived in one of the rooms within the aircraft and took a seat at the center. You sure are confident about this, the system voiced. If you're not going to give moral support, you might as well shut it, Gustav responded, internally sounding displeased. Oh, my bad, Captain Ameri. Shush, let me concentrate. It would be a lot faster if you tapped into your cosmic superiority. That would just help the MBO pinpoint my location. Unlike how I only use specks of it to deal with that general. I'd probably have to activate it in full strength, which is not an option. You seem to be forgetting one crucial detail. Immediately after the system spoke, Gustav opened his eyes. I didn't forget. It's just unreliable, he responded. Why so? Sure, we're in a loop, which means everything I do now will be reversed to a time where it never happened. But what if we get rid of the loop, and instead of starting from the beginning of the 5-day checkpoint, we resume time at a different point? For instance, the exact point when we got rid of the loop, Gustav voiced with a troubled tone. If he activated cosmic superiority in full power and his worries came to pass, it would mean that he had given off his location, which would attract the Alliance. On the other hand, if they got out of the loop and resumed time at the start of the region after the dead man zone, then his actions would also never have happened, and he would be in the clear. No one knew what the outcome would be, so Gustav never bothered to consider the option. I'd say do it and worry about your troubles later. Are you assuring me that? No, I am not. Then shut up. Silence. Gustav shut his eyes once more and tried to focus. The last time he managed to trigger a meeting with other cosmic superior beings, it happened like a dream. Recalling that he fell asleep, Gustav calmed himself to reenact the same scenario. Seconds turned into minutes and minutes into hours. The spacecraft was set to arrive at the region after the dead man zone in 5 hours, and before Gustav knew it, 4 hours had gone by. This isn't working. He slowly opened his eyes with a look of defeat. You think? The system chimed in his head. I'll just use cosmic superiority, Gustav decided. I thought you said it wasn't feasible? Well, it doesn't seem like I have much of a choice. Since this gives me the chance to ask the most powerful faceless one for help, I'll take it. Gustav reached into the depths of his being after making his decision. A golden, cross-shaped glow suddenly appeared in the middle of his pupils as his entire eyes burst forth with a mixture of pinkish-red light. An incomprehensible presence of divinity captured the entire spacecraft and spread hundreds of miles across space. Indrik, Eldris, and Rhea all felt a sense of reverence overcome them as the aura spread. Gustav was of course responsible for the change in the surroundings. Due to activating cosmic superiority, his cosmic energy had grown so powerful that it could be felt from a very far distance. And no matter how strong a being was, Gustav's cosmic superiority would have had some sort of effect on them if they happened to stand before him. However, he seemed to have other plans in mind for activating it that day. Gustav's mind bridged on what happened the other day when he fell asleep. How he met with the other cosmic superior beings in some sort of space that didn't exist in the normal world. His cosmic superiority turned into a kind of signal at that point, spreading to the far reaches of galaxies and drawing the attention of specific beings. Gustav's eyes remained closed as he focused on his objective. It didn't take long before he found himself in the same space as before, a space void of matter and time where unknown beings suddenly began to appear one after the other. The Earthling has summoned us again? What do you think you are doing, child? We understand you performed the act unknowingly the last time, but what is your excuse now? Speak. Their voices oozed with authority as they spoke in annoyance. They were around 7 in number, depicting the number of cosmic superior beings that existed in the entire universe except Gustav. Oh, so that is what happened before. I summoned them. I still can't remember all of what happened. I apologize, but it was a necessary action. Gustav turned to stare at his target. Faceless one. Your second is on the hunt for me, Gustav said to the one standing at the edge of the space, just like the faceless one chasing them. It also lacked the properties of a face. Eyes, mouth, nose, ears, all missing. However, its branch-like crimson hair seemed to be longer than the other. What is it you expect me to do about that? The faceless one spoke in a different tongue, but Gustav fully understood. He puts my little brother and friends at risk with such. I do not understand how he keeps finding me, but you need to tell him to back down, Gustav voiced with a threatening tone, causing all other cosmic superior beings to stare at the faceless one. This has nothing to do with us. There will be consequences next time Gustav Crimson summons us for personal reasons. I'm off as well. The cosmic superior beings began to vanish from space one after the other. The faceless one raised one of his hands to pat his head and grunted in annoyance. Eve took from my hair, he voiced, so that's its name. Eve, Gustav took note. Okay, so what does that have to do with this? Gustav inquired. That is why he can find you. Cosmic superior beings are linked. Eve is using my hair to make a connection to you. You will never be able to escape, the faceless one explained. So I'm in danger because you couldn't stop someone from snatching a piece of your hair? That is rather lousy, Gustav pointed out. Do not insult me, Gustav Crimson, the faceless one stated with an infuriated look. Then do the right thing and get him away from us. I am tired of this ceaseless pursuit, Gustav responded while drawing closer. I cannot help you. Eve must be doing this to get information on how we can create offspring. He will not stop until he does what is needed to be done. The faceless one shook his head. Then stop him, Gustav demanded. We the faceless don't do things that way, child. The faceless one vanished after responding. Gustav was left in space alone. If I end him, I'd better not see your sorry ass coming for revenge. He decided to leave the space as well, causing his consciousness to return to his body. That was a waste, he voiced while getting to his feet. Look on the bright side. At least you managed to piss off a room full of the most powerful beings in the universe. Fuck you, Gus. We're here, Eldris's voice called out from outside the room. I only spent a few minutes in there, and an hour already went by? Gustav still felt there was a lot he didn't understand but decided to step out of the room. The spacecraft was starting to slow down and he could feel it. Arriving back in the control room, Gustav could see that they had truly arrived at their destination. "I'm heading out," Endrik said while patting Gustav's shoulder and moving towards the exit. "Be careful. Let us know if you notice anything," Gustav voiced in concern. Endrik nodded before snapping his finger. A telekinetic space with oxygen surrounded him as he stepped out of the spacecraft and flew to its top. His forehead, which was emitting a green light, intensified in glow as an unfathomable power spread across that part of outer space. "Can you find it, Fusarius?" Endrik inquired. "There is no conventional method, but if it is around here, I should be able to sense it." Fusarius's voice beamed within the spacecraft. Rhea questioned Gustav about what he had spent the last 5 hours doing. "I was trying to get a Feve off our back. That's the name of the faceless one after us, or specifically after me," Gustav clarified. "Any luck with that?" Chapter 1436. Escaping Efeve clutches. "I was trying to get a Feve off our back. That's the name of the faceless one after us, or specifically after me," Gustav clarified. "Efeve? That's a weird name," Rhea stated bluntly. "You should hear the name of the cosmic superior faceless one." Gustav wondered what Rhea would call that if he knew of it. "I tried to get him to help us take a Feve off our case," Gustav added. "Any luck with that?" Eldris inquired. "Nah. He said he can't do that. It isn't the way of the faceless." "Whatever that means," Gustav responded. "Bummer," Rhea mumbled. "He mentioned something else." Gustav paused for a bit with a disturbed expression. "He said the reason Efeve keeps getting to us is because he has a piece of his hair," Gustav revealed. "What does his hair have to do with this?" Rhea questioned. "Cosmic superiority beings are linked, so he uses the cosmic strand to link us and locates us each time," Gustav explained. Gustav watched as shock plastered all over Rhea and Eldris's faces after his revelation. "Is there any way we can get it from him?" Eldris asked. "Even if we did, we would still have this loop problem." Gustav shook his head softly. "Isn't Endrik taking care of that at the moment?" Rhea said while looking around. "There is no guarantee that he will find it." A plan began formulating in Gustav's head immediately after he spoke. "I haven't." Before Gustav could complete his sentence, space pulsated rhythmically up ahead. They all turned to stare in the northeast direction in horror. "He's here," Eldris stated. "Endrik!" Gustav yelled and vanished. "Fuhum." He reappeared atop the spacecraft and reached out to grab Endrik, who was floating while emitting a powerful green glow from his figure. Earth. Within a broad space lay an exemplar of sophistication and high-class design. Its expansive dimensions were accentuated by the minimalist, yet opulent decor, where the interplay of natural light and shadows cast a serene ambience conducive to focused deliberation. The room was encased in panels of dark, rich mahogany, their polished surfaces reflecting the subdued lighting from the elegant, recessed ceiling fixtures, creating an atmosphere of warmth and exclusivity. At the heart of the boardroom lay a grand, elongated table, its surface a flawless expanse of gleaming, jet black marble. There was no question that the imposing centerpiece commanded respect. Its sleek, reflective top mirroring the solemn expressions of those seated around it. Around the table, figures clad in authoritative uniforms convened their attire, a testament to their positions of power within the MBO. Medals and insignias, symbols of achievements and rank, glinted under the soft lighting, adding a touch of solemnity and pride to the gathering. "What is this talk about sending more of our officers to the Alliance?" The officer backing the ceiling-high window that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline voiced in bafflement. "It was requested by the Alliance to capture the fugitive, Gustav Crimson," General Chell answered from the other end. "They have enough forces. It is unwise for us to give more." Another general voiced his opinion. "Other planets agreed, so it would be odd if we decided not to," General Chell responded. "Yes, capturing Gustav Crimson should be the #1 priority," Another officer agreed with General Chell. With all due respect, we have already put a lot of resources into capturing Gustav Crimson. At this point, we are starting to neglect that there are bigger issues to take care of right here on our planet and not out there in the stars. Commander Zanatus, who was also present, stated with a respectful yet assertive tone. We have enough forces to handle whatever is on the ground, just as much as what is in the sky, General Chell responded. Not according to recent data. Another officer shook their head while putting up a bunch of holographic statistics. The meeting seemed to be split between two sides. One side was with General Chell, while the other side disagreed with him. Grand Commander Cheyenne, what is your take on this? Commander Zanatus said to an aged-looking man with a diamond shard in his forehead. Enough with the bickering. The Grand Commanders will decide on this later. For now, this meeting is adjourned, Grand Commander Cheyenne stated with an authoritative tone. Minutes after the meeting came to an end, General Chell approached Grand Commander Cheyenne. We need to make a move now, or we are going to lose Gustav to the Draconites, he stated. What do you mean by that? Grand Commander Cheyenne inquired with a suspicious expression. They employed a very powerful entity to capture him. Who? Amidst the serenity of space, where stars twinkled like distant lighthouses guiding the wanderers of the cosmos, a spacecraft, its design unconventional with a distinct pentagon shape, could be spotted floating in place. Atop this vessel were two remarkable-looking figures. The first figure, an individual with curly black hair, floated slightly above the vessel. On his forehead, a green glowing dot pulsed with an ethereal light, marking him as someone of significant power and mystique around him. An aura of formidable energy emanated, pushing against the very fabric of space, distorting the area with an invisible force. His eyes were focused, reflecting a resolve that was both calming and intimidating. Beside him, the second figure, with dirty blonde hair, exuded a different kind of significance. The individual carried a weight in their demeanor, a target of unimaginable value. It was that figure that beckoned the extraordinary, drawing forth the presence of divinity without warning. The space before the spacecraft distorted, a rippling effect that heralded the arrival of the entity with crimson, tree-like hair. It materialized with silent grace, floating before the vessel, its hair billowing in an unseen cosmic wind. The entity's appearance was mesmerizing, its hair glowing with a deep, rich hue that contrasted starkly against the backdrop of space. The moment of confrontation was electric, charged with an unseen tension that gripped the void. Indrik's eyes remained closed, almost like he was lost in a trance. Gustav reached out to touch him, but the energy that emanated from Indrik's figure repelled his hand. With the Epheve right before him, Gustav decided to make a last-minute decision and a bold move. He launched himself into the vacuum of space, propelling away from the spacecraft in the opposite direction. His movement was swift, a desperate bid to draw the crimson-haired being away, sacrificing his safety since he seemed to be headed back for the dead man Zoe. The faceless one stood in place for a bit, seemingly confounded, but soon his gaze shifted, locking onto the fleeing figure with an intensity that belied its serene appearance. With a fluid motion, it gave chase, moving through space with an ease that defied physics. Ultimate combination has been activated. Gustav's figure morphed as he wove through asteroids and debris, pushing his limits in a desperate bid to outrun the faceless one. Even though he knew it was impossible, he aimed to get Epheve as far away from the spacecraft as possible so the others could get out of there, and the only chance he felt he had at achieving this was by heading back to the dead man zone. That made it impossible for any being of matter to pass through. Fwish, they both transcend unimaginable speed as Epheve closes in on him. Meanwhile, back on the spacecraft, Indrik suddenly opened his eyes. I found the focal point, he voiced before blinking. Twice, he reappeared within the spacecraft that was already veering forward with Eldris taking charge. Where is Gustav? Indrik inquired with a slightly befuddled look. We need to get out of here now, or he won't be safe, Eldris stated before powering up the hyperjump. Indrik's face lit up in realization as the recent events played out in his head. Husarius, why didn't you tell me? He yelled out. Breaking concentration would have prevented us from finding the focal point, Fusarius answered without an ounce of remorse while the spacecraft turned into a line that streaked forward with intensity. On the outside, Gustav closed in on a massive net wriggling with violent throngs of energy. I know what you are planning. I won't let you. The voice of the Faceless One thrummed across space as it suddenly accelerated Fusum before Gustav could reach the net. If Eve reached him, Gustav tried to evade, but if Eve caught him by the neck and held him in place as Gustav struggled powerlessly. Now I have you. His voice reached Gustav's hearing once more even though he wasn't speaking. Do you? A smirk suddenly appeared on Gustav's face as he stared at a countdown one. A burst of sky-blue light suddenly emanated from his wrist, completely consuming his figure. Gustav vanished in the next moment, causing Efive's hand to close in on nothing. No. Although Efive was faceless, one could sense the frustration in his voice as infuriating energy spread forth from his being. Chapter 1437, Finding the Focal Point. You'll have to stop when we reach the region after the Dead Man Zone. I want to try something, Indrik stated. Gustav nodded while steering forward undaunted. They needed to escape the clutches of the Faceless One, so Gustav was open to any option. Maybe I should try triggering that right now. Gustav set the course for the spacecraft to head to the desired location, and after seeing the number of hours it would take for them to get there, he got off his seat. Where are you going? Ria questioned. To try contacting the other Faceless One. They'll be back, Gustav responded while walking off. Soon he arrived in one of the rooms within the aircraft and took a seat at the center. You sure are confident about this, the system voiced. If you're not going to give moral support, you might as well shut it, Gustav responded, internally sounding displeased. Oh, my bad, Captain Ameri. Shush, let me concentrate. It would be a lot faster if you tapped into your cosmic superiority. That would just help the MBO pinpoint my location. Unlike how I only use specks of it to deal with that, General. I'd probably have to activate it in full strength, which is not an option. You seem to be forgetting one crucial detail. Immediately after the system spoke, Gustav opened his eyes. I didn't forget, it's just unreliable, he responded. Why so? Sure, we're in a loop, which means everything I do now will be reversed to a time where it never happened. But what if we get rid of the loop and instead of starting from the beginning of the 5-day checkpoint, we resume time at a different point? For instance, the exact point when we got rid of the loop, Gustav voiced with a troubled tone. If he activated cosmic superiority in full power and his worries came to pass, it would mean that he had given off his location, which would attract the Alliance. On the other hand, if they got out of the loop and resumed time at the start of the region after the Dead Man Zone, then his actions would also never have happened, and he would be in the clear. No one knew what the outcome would be, so Gustav never bothered to consider the option. I'd say do it, and worry about your troubles later. Are you assuring me that? No, I am not. Then shut up. Silence. Gustav shut his eyes once more and tried to focus. The last time he managed to trigger a meeting with other cosmic superior beings, it happened like a dream. I'm off as well. The cosmic superior beings began to vanish from space one after the other. The Faceless One raised one of his hands to pat his head and grunted in annoyance. Efive took from my hair, he voiced. So that's its name. Efive, Gustav took note. Okay, so what does that have to do with this? Gustav inquired. That is why he can find you. Cosmic superior beings are linked. Efive is using my hair to make a connection to you. You will never be able to escape, the Faceless One explained. So I'm in danger because you couldn't stop someone from snatching a piece of your hair? That is rather lousy, Gustav pointed out. Do not insult me, Gustav Crimson, the Faceless One stated with an infuriated look. Then do the right thing and get him away from us. I am tired of this ceaseless pursuit, Gustav responded while drawing closer. I cannot help you. Efive must be doing this to get information on how we can create offspring. He will not stop until he does what is needed to be done. The Faceless One shook his head. Then stop him, Gustav demanded. We the Faceless don't do things that way, child. The Faceless One vanished after responding. Gustav was left in space alone. If I end him, I'd better not see your sorry ass coming for revenge. He decided to leave the space as well, causing his consciousness to return to his body. That was a waste, he voiced while getting to his feet. Look on the bright side. Chapter 1438, Escaping Efive Clutches. I was trying to get Efive off our back. That's the name of the faceless one after us, or specifically, after me, Gustav clarified. Efive, that's a weird name, Ria stated bluntly. You should hear the name of the cosmic superior faceless one. Gustav wondered what Ria would call that if he knew of it. I tried to get him to help us take Efive off our case, Gustav added. Any luck with that? Eldris inquired. Nah. He said he can't do that. It isn't the way of the faceless, whatever that means, Gustav responded. Bummer, Ria mumbled. He mentioned something else. Gustav paused for a bit with a disturbed expression. He said the reason Efive keeps getting to us is because he has a piece of his hair, Gustav revealed. What does his hair have to do with this? Ria questioned. Cosmic superiority beings are linked, so he uses the cosmic strand to link us and locates us each time, Gustav explained. Gustav watched as shock plastered all over Ria and Eldris' faces after his revelation. Is there any way we can get it from him? Eldris asked. Even if we did, we would still have this loop problem. Gustav shook his head softly. Isn't Indrik taking care of that at the moment? Ria said while looking around. There is no guarantee that he will find it. A plan began formulating in Gustav's head immediately after he spoke. I haven't. Before Gustav could complete his sentence, space pulsated rhythmically up ahead. They all turned to stare in the northeast direction in horror. He's here, Eldris stated. Indrik! Gustav yelled and vanished. Fuhum, he reappeared atop the spacecraft and reached out to grab Indrik, who was floating while emitting a powerful green glow from his figure. Earth. Within a broad space lay an exemplar of sophistication and high-class design. Its expansive dimensions were accentuated by the minimalist, yet opulent decor, where the interplay of natural light and shadows cast a serene ambience conducive to focused deliberation. In a bold move, he launched himself into the vacuum of space, propelling away from the spacecraft in the opposite direction. His movement was swift, a desperate bid to draw the crimson-haired being away, sacrificing his safety since he seemed to be headed back for the dead man zone. The faceless one stood in place for a bit, seemingly confounded, but soon, his gaze shifted, locking onto the fleeing figure with an intensity that belied its serene appearance. With a fluid motion, it gave chase, moving through space with an ease that defied physics. Ultimate combination has been activated. Gustav's figure morphed as he wove through asteroids and debris, pushing his limits in a desperate bid to outrun the faceless one even though he knew it was impossible. He aimed to get Efive as far away from the spacecraft as possible so the others could get out of there, and the only chance he felt he had at achieving this was by heading back to the dead man zone that made it impossible for any being of matter to pass through. Fwish, they both transcend unimaginable speed as Efive closes in on him. Meanwhile, back on the spacecraft, Indrik suddenly opened his eyes. I found the focal point, he voiced before blinking. Twiwi. He reappeared within the spacecraft that was already veering forward with Eldris taking charge. Where is Gustav? Indrik inquired with a slightly befuddled look. We need to get out of here now, or he won't be safe, Eldris stated before powering up the hyperjump. Indrik's face lit up in realization as the recent events played out in his head. Fusarius, why didn't you tell me? He yelled out. Breaking concentration would have prevented us from finding the focal point. Fusarius answered without an ounce of remorse while the spacecraft turned into a line that streaked forward with intensity. On the outside, Gustav closed in on a massive net wriggling with violent throngs of energy. I know what you were planning. I won't let you. The voice of the faceless one thrummed across space as it suddenly accelerated. Fusum, before Gustav could reach the net, Efive reached him. Gustav tried to evade, but Efive caught him by the neck and held him in place as Gustav struggled powerlessly. Now I have you. His voice reached Gustav's hearing once more even though he wasn't speaking. Do you? A smirk suddenly appeared on Gustav's face as he stared at a countdown. 1, A burst of sky-blue light suddenly emanated from his wrist, completely consuming his figure. Gustav vanished in the next moment, causing Ifeve's hand to close in on nothing. No. Although Ifeve was faceless, one could sense the frustration in his voice as infuriating energy spread forth from his being. Chapter 1439. The exit point. In a bit, they were floating before the endless void of space, ready to take on the repelling force before them. Gustav, with his dirty blonde hair framing a visage marked by determination, gazed out into the void, his mind racing with strategies and possibilities. Beside him, Indrik flexed his fingers, the air around them shimmering slightly as he prepared to wield his telekinesis. Eldris opened his eyes, reflecting the vastness of space, stood calm, and maintained his composure. Rhea, muscles tensed and energy crackling at his fingertips, drew from the distant power of a star. No one knew he was capable of it initially, but it wasn't the time to question him. Their mission was clear: breach the repellent force that stood between them and the dark, desiccated planet hidden at the center of the universe. A planet is visible only to Gustav at the moment. Indrik flew forward first and with a deep breath extended his hands. The space before them twisted under the force of his telekinesis. Invisible strands of energy weaved together, forming a lattice aimed at piercing the barrier. Yet, despite his efforts and the raw power at his command, the barrier remained. Indrik even tried letting his telekinesis go through the repelling force, but it was still the same result. "It's like pushing against the fabric of the universe itself," Indrik said, frustration lacing his voice. "There's no giving, no breaking point." Next, Rhea channeled the energy he had drawn from the distant star, his body aglow with a fierce, incandescent light. With a roar that echoed through the vacuum of space, he launched himself forward, his fist aimed at the center. Even before he could make contact, the repelling force was already slowing him down. However, the strike was still immensely powerful. The impact sent ripples through space, a spectacle of light and energy that would awe any onlooker. Yet, there was no breach in the repelling force. Eldris transformed their surroundings into a colorless void. In the altered state, he attempted to weaken the repelling force or render it null. But as his powers reached out, they found no purchase. The repelling force existed beyond the reach of the altercation. Eldris shook his head in defeat. The others understood at that moment that their abilities weren't working on the surroundings, but they still needed to keep trying. Hours passed as they regrouped and tried various strategies. Even then, their powers were unable to find a weakness in the repelling force. Gustav gazed into the distance while different options ran through his mind. At that moment, he made a conscious decision. From his storage space, he retrieved golden and green boots, their appearance ancient, yet imbued with a power that felt alive, almost conscious. The Void Stepper was an artifact that was said to defy the limitations of movement and travel. "What are those?" Rhea asked, his curiosity piqued by the boots' unmistakable aura. "An old legend," Indrik replied while turning to stare at Gustav, who was strapping the boots onto his feet. "They're said to step through the void itself, to travel where one wished without regard for barriers or distances," he added. Silence fell on the group, a mixture of skepticism and hope, as Gustav stood ready. "Are you sure?" Indrik asked Gustav. "You're asking if I am sure about taking a step forward and finding myself within the epicenter instead of 3 galaxies away with half my body disintegrated?" "Nah, am not," Gustav answered with a poker face as opposed to his concern. "Don't worry. They'll try not to overdo it," Gustav added before they could speak. With a breath that felt like it could be his last, he took a step forward. The boots glowed brightly, a beacon in the darkness, and in an instant, Gustav vanished from sight. Gustav reappeared light minutes away from his initial location and found himself standing before the dark planet. He turned back, shooting a glance into the distance where the repellent force existed that now separated him from the others. He activated the comlink, and his voice was transmitted straight into their ears. "I'm here. The boots worked. I've crossed in and no longer feel the repellent force." Eldris' voice beamed through, a blend of relief and excitement. Great. Do you still see the planet? Gustav's gaze swept over the desolate landscape. Yeah, it's in an even worse state than I had expected. Outside the repelling perimeter, Indrik, Eldris, and Rhea nodded in understanding. Will you be able to take us with you? Indrik inquired. It is really difficult to control. I feel like one misstep would cost a lot, Gustav said internally. Maybe you shouldn't then. The system responded in his head. Nah, I have to. If I could split myself in two, I wouldn't need them, but I can't, Gustav answered while turning around. You made use of your body weight to balance the movement and control the Void Stepper to an extent. Take them one after the other so it doesn't offset that balance by much, the system suggested. Sure. Hold on. I'm coming back for each of you. Prepare yourselves, he announced to the others with resolve. Gustav took a step forward, appearing before the others in an instant. The control over the Void Stepper's power required intense concentration, a balancing act between his will and the ancient sacred item of capricious energy. He began to take them in, one after the other. With each journey back, Gustav felt the boot's power testing his limits, as if challenging his right to wield their might. First, he reached for Eldris, his calm demeanor belying his anticipation of the unknown that awaited him. Gustav extended his hand, and as their fingers touched, a surge of energy enveloped them. With a step forward, they traversed the perimeter of the repellent force yielding to the Void Stepper's ancient command. Eldris held his breath at the sight that greeted him. The dark planet, a vista of ruins and desolation, yet undeniably beautiful in its starkness. Incredible, he whispered, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. Next, Gustav returned for Indrik. As they stepped through the perimeter together, Indrik's mind raced with questions and hypotheses about the barrier's origins. Lastly, Gustav took Rhea across the barrier. The strength that emanated from Rhea was comforting, a steadfast presence in the face of the uncertainty that lay ahead. As they set foot on the dark planet, Rhea clenched his fists, ready for whatever challenges they may face. After all, it was pretty much the last step standing between them and the rescue of their friends. Together again, the four stood on the brink of exploration, their mission clear yet daunting. The exit point. The exit point was the precise location where the mundane one had told them to perform the ritual for opening the rifts. He had given them details of how the place looked and how to reach there. The planet, however, was not without its dangers. They had been warned of the vanishing wind, an eerie phenomenon that swept across the surface unseen. The slightest contact with the wind could displace any living being to an unknown location, a risk that would add an extra layer of peril to their journey. We need to be vigilant. The vanishing wind is invisible and unpredictable. Stick close and watch each other's backs, Gustav instructed, his leadership unquestioned. Using their natural speed to navigate the surroundings might prove more dangerous, so they decided to set it aside. They proceeded with caution, their senses heightened to the subtlest of cues. The planet's surface was a labyrinth of ruins, each step revealing that civilization had once thrived there. The silence was profound, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the desiccated soil. Hours passed as they navigated through the ruins, the sense of desolation deepening with every step. Despite the dangers, there was a beauty in the desolation, a reminder of the planet's vibrant past and the fleeting nature of existence. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they arrived at a vast clearing. In its center stood an ancient structure, its architecture defying the ravages of time. It was none other than the exit point, its presence almost mystical in the desolate surroundings. The monolithic structure was proof that they were in the right place, which meant that the time had finally arrived. Are you guys ready? Gustav asked them. I didn't come all this way to back down now, Rhea voiced in response. We're rescuing them both and nothing can stop us, Eldris added resolutely. Indrik only nodded in response, but one could see the chilling expression on his face. He rubbed the bracelet on his right wrist, causing it to emit a mild gleam. I need all the help I can get on this, he said internally. Indrik, the items, Gustav called out to him. Indrik nodded, then rummaged through his personal storage space with practiced ease, producing a collection of items that would seem bizarre to any uninformed onlooker, but were essential to their task. Among the items were the horns of an unknown beast, curling into the air with a malevolent grace, the heart of a mixed blood, still and silent, and an assortment of personal items, including a piece of clothing and a comb. Chapter 1440, Unsettling Omen. Indrik laid out the items, forming a perimeter around a drawn runic circle. The runes, etched into the ground with a precision that spoke of ancient knowledge, seemed to dance in the fading light, awaiting an infusion of energy to awaken them from their slumber. They all stepped forward as Gustav directed them to stand in specific positions. Gustav and Eldris stood at opposite ends of the circle, their hands extended as they gathered energy that permeated the ancient circle. Rhea and Indrik moved around the perimeter, ensuring each item resonated with the energy being channeled. As the ritual progressed, the air around them became charged, the boundary between the physical and the ethereal blurring. The runes started to glow, a soft light at first, growing in intensity with each passing moment until the circle became a beacon of pulsating energy. Indrik, now, Gustav announced, his voice steady, a counterpoint to the storm of energy that raged around them. Indrik's forehead emitted a bright green glow at that moment, causing the energy of the time candidate to spread across the vicinity. He wasn't making use of his telekinesis, only Husarius was at work. The energy around them peaked a crescendo of light and power that enveloped the group, the ancient items, and the runic circle in a dome of radiant energy. The heart of the mixed blood pulsed once, a beat that resonated through the ground and into the very fabric of the universe. And then, as suddenly as it began, the energy receded, the light dimming until only the glow of the runes remained. Thrigs, a violent ripping sound suddenly resonated across the surroundings, and in the next moment, two rifts started to materialize, one on each side of the monolith. The rifts continuously extended, till they become large enough to form a passageway. Gustav opened his eyes and looked around at his companions in the intensity of the moment. "We've done it. It is time to rescue them," Eldris voiced with a tone of seriousness. Rhea gulped as the moment had been long anticipated. "That one should lead to Falco, while this one leads to Angie." Gustav pointed at the one directly perpendicular to his location. "Which one do you want to take?" Indrik asked. It was a difficult question that Gustav hadn't been able to answer in weeks. He always said that he would cross the bridge when he got there, and they had finally gotten there, but he still hesitated. "I don't know what Falco might have become, so despite this being a rescue, he might still be a threat. There should be fewer complications with Angie, so I should let them handle bringing her back instead of going myself. They'll take on the bigger threat so as not to jeopardize their safety." Gustav put the whole situation into retrospective view and made a calculated decision. "Are you sure about that?" The system inquired internally. "It's the best choice. A safer option for them," Gustav answered. The system bothered him no more afterward, and Gustav decided to make his decision known. "They'll leave getting Angie back into the hands of you two." He pointed at Indrik and Eldris. He believed that with their capabilities they would be able to handle that much. "Rhea, you're with me," Gustav said while moving towards the left. "All right." Indrik nodded before heading towards the right. "Use the cloaking tool and try as much as possible not to attract any presence. The rift will only be open for 3 hours. Afterward, anyone still within will be stuck in the other dimension forever," Gustav warned. "Then, let us not waste another moment." Eldris peered forward in determination. Together, they stepped forward, leaving the ancient structure and the activated runic circle behind. The path before them was uncharted, a journey that promised imminent danger and destruction, yet they remained unfettered. In the far reaches of the cosmos, nestled within a constellation seldom gazed upon by human eyes, laid a planet unlike any other. This world, known to its inhabitants as Orion, was a marvel of natural beauty and ethereal landscapes. Its sky, a canvas of vibrant hues, reflected the diverse and rich life forms that called Orion home. Among those beings were the ethereals, a race distinguished by their luminous halo-like rings that floated gracefully above their skulls, and magnificent wings that unfurled with the colors of the dawn. The ethereals resided in a society governed by wisdom, harmony, and the pursuit of enlightenment. High-ranking members of the society often gathered in a council, held in a location as breathtaking as their appearance, a floating citadel of light and crystal, suspended in the sky by ancient power known only to them. It was within that citadel that a council meeting unlike any other was taking place. As the meeting commenced, the chamber was filled with the soft glow of the ethereal's halos, casting ethereal shadows on the walls. The council members, each representing different facets of ethereal society, were seated in a circle, their wings gently folded behind them. At the head of the circle sat the Archon, a figure of noble stature, whose halo shined with a brilliance that signified their leadership. Esteemed members of the council, the Archon began, its voice echoing softly in the crystalline chamber. We are gathered here to discuss a matter of grave concern. Reports have emerged from the edges of our solar system of a phenomenon that disturbs the very fabric of our reality. Whispers of an omen of destruction plague our people, stirring unrest and fear. A murmur of concern spread among the council members, their halos flickering with unease. Surely, we cannot lend credence to mere superstitions, argued Sraffel, a council member known for their rational mind and keen insights. Our ancestors have long taught us to seek explanations in the stars, not in the shadows of fear. Yet, we cannot ignore the signs, countered Lumina, a member whose wisdom was often sought in matters of the arcane. The celestial alignments speak of a truth we must acknowledge. The stars do not lie, and their message is clear. We face a threat that could unravel the very essence of Orion. It is much better to take it seriously than end up like the Osis. The council descended into a debate, their voices rising and falling like the tides. Some members dismissed the phenomenon as an unfounded basis for panic, arguing that their advanced knowledge and capabilities could withstand any challenge. Others, however, sensed the weight of the prophecy and feared that dismissing it could lead to their downfall. As the discussion reached an impasse, the Archon raised a hand for silence. It is clear that we stand divided on this matter, they stated, their voice calm but firm. However, we must act for the welfare of our people and our planet. There is one among us, a being of unparalleled insight and power, who can traverse the boundaries of our knowledge and seek the truth. Heads nodded in agreement, the tension in the room easing at the mention of the revered figure. We speak of the Crackle, the Archon continued. Let us call upon them to investigate this disturbing phenomenon. Only then can we truly understand the nature of the threat and decide our course of action. The council members rose, their wings unfurling in a display of unity and resolve. In the unfathomable reaches of a dimension far beyond the confines of human understanding laid an expanse where the fabric of reality twists into configurations impossible to grasp. The realm, shrouded in impenetrable darkness, defied the very notions of space and time. It was a place where time did not flow, standing still in a perpetual now that stretched into infinity. The concept of distance there was equally elusive. Location seemed both infinitely far and unsettlingly close, creating an overwhelming sense of disorientation. The structure of the higher dimension existed in a state that could only be described as roundabout and yet hollow. It was as if the very essence of being was both condensed into a single point and dispersed across an endless void. The darkness that enveloped everything was not merely the absence of light, but a palpable entity that seemed to consume any semblance of warmth or comfort. It whispered about forgotten ages and lost existences, filling the atmosphere with an eerie sense of ancientness and otherworldliness. Amidst this indescribable setting, two figures emerged, their presence an anomaly in the timeless expanse. One with dirty blonde hair, and the other with hair as dark as the void around them. They stood as stark contrasts not only to each other, but to the very fabric of the dimension itself. Their arrival was silent, unnoticed by the unseen forces that dwelled within the darkness, yet it was a bold defiance of the natural order of the place. The vicinity ahead of them, if one could even call it that, in a place devoid of physical landmarks, appeared as a fluctuating mirage. It was an area where the dense darkness seemed to swirl with a purpose, hiding secrets that had never been witnessed by mortal eyes. Chapter 1441, Rescuing Falco. The aim of the two figures seemed to be the infiltration of the zone, driven by motives known only to themselves. The sensation of being in the dimension was nothing short of overwhelming. The absence of time rendering every moment eternal and every second a lifetime of experience. The eerie silence was broken only by the sound of their movements, which seemed muffled and distant in the dense atmosphere. The air was thick with an unnameable essence, making every breath an effort and every step a venture into the unknown. Web-like threads spread with every single movement, causing their faces to twist with worry. As they advanced, the reality around them seemed to react, shifting and morphing in ways that challenged comprehension. Indescribable shapes flickered in the periphery of their vision, and mute sounds echoed through the void. It felt as though the dimension itself was both aware and unaware of their presence. Emerging from the swirling vortex of darkness, Gustav and Ria found themselves within a realm that defied logic. They were surrounded by gargantuan rocky structures, each floating in the void yet connected by chains longer and more massive than any skyscraper conceived by human imagination. The chains, forged from an unknown material, shimmered with an ethereal light, casting eerie shadows that danced across the void. The darkness there was alive, pulsating with a malevolent energy that seemed to watch and whisper. As they cautiously navigated the surreal landscape, their eyes were drawn to a distant figure. The being, humanoid yet distinctly otherworldly, stood in stark contrast against the oppressive darkness. A massive, dark wing extended from its left side, unfurling into the void with a regal yet ominous presence. Above its head, a spiky crown pulsed with power so intense it distorted the air around it. Drawing closer, they observed the being's inhumane characteristics. Eyes that glowed with an internal fire, skin etched with glowing runes of ancient power, and limbs that combined the elegance of a deity with the ferocity of a creature born from darkness. Most strikingly, the being was bound by restraints that appeared almost sentient, coiling around its form and anchoring it to the surrounding floating rocks. Gustav couldn't help but squint in suspicion. They soon arrived in clear view of the being, who seemed to be struggling with his eyes closed, occasionally wriggling and writhing in pain that was invisible to the naked eye. As they drew closer, they realized that the being indeed bore facial similarities with their friend. "Falco?" Gustav whispered. The realization hit them with a mix of relief and urgency. "How is? He looks very different." Ria gazed at the part of his face that elongated into an upside-down V structure. "Yes, but why is he restrained?" Gustav's gaze locked on the coils that bound Falco in place. "If his father is truly who I think he is, why would he bind his son?" Gustav's concern grew as he observed the surroundings. "Can you hear us?" called out Ria, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. The bound being's eyes flickered open immediately, his pupils dilating as the coils suddenly thrummed with unprecedented energy. "Eh." The being screamed in excruciating pain as a throng of darkness burst forth. Bang! Bang! Gustav and Ria were instantly blasted backward with intensity. The dimension shimmered and pulsed from the sudden discharge, spreading to every nook and cranny, causing the other beings within to worry. Gustav managed to put a protective layer of energy around himself and Ria before they got hit, but even at that, they were both bleeding from their orifices. Gustav's ears were ringing so badly that it affected even his vision. His body began to slowly regenerate, but he couldn't imagine just how much it would have affected Ria, since even he was hit that badly. "Gus. Gus." He could faintly hear his name being called, but it wasn't coming from Ria, who was beside him. The bound being's eyes flickered with recognition, and a voice, deep and resonant, yet strained by confinement, filled their surroundings. "Gus. Gustav. You came for me. Falco, is it really you?" Gustav wiped the blood off his face while drawing closer. The bound being nodded in response. Don't come any closer. I don't want to hurt you. His voice distorted repeatedly as he spoke. His disillusioned look slowly rescinded as he seemed to have completely gained consciousness. We're getting you out of here, Gustav declared, his resolve steeling. The moment Gustav touched one of the coils, his hand turned thin and bony like life was being sapped from it. He quickly retreated. Just tell us how to get rid of these restraints. Falco's gaze shifted to the chains and then back to them. These are not mere physical bindings. They are forged from the essence of this dimension, a manifestation of its will to contain what it cannot control. Rhea seemed to be coming around at that point. He and Gustav exchanged a determined glance, understanding the gravity of their task. They must not only contend in a fight to free their friend, but also engage in a battle against the very essence of the dimension. I could use Cohelia, but that would pretty much ruin our cloak. He will be aware of our presence if I do that. As Gustav contemplated their next move, the air around them began to thicken, and the whispers in the dark grew louder, more menacing. It was clear that something or someone was coming. You two need to leave. They always come to inspect me after a search. Go. Falco yelled with a look of urgency. We are not leaving you here. You are coming with us? Rhea tried to touch the restraints with rocks wrapped around his hands, but they all disintegrated upon contact. Listen, Falco. It took a lot to get here. After everything we have done to reach this point, giving up isn't an option. These restraints are trying to hold back your power, right? But have you really tried to free yourself from them? Gustav's question caused a hint of worry to appear on Falco's face. Emma needs you to unleash everything you've got so we can get out of here, Gustav urged Falco while scanning the surroundings. I don't think that is a good idea. Falco shook his head from side to side. Pa. Gustav landed a slap on Falco's face and pulled his head closer. Now is not the time to be uncertain. Either you do it right now, or we're toast, he stated with a tone of urgency. The slap seemed to work as a wake-up call for Falco as he suddenly reclined his face while energy began to gather around him. Find somewhere to hide, he suggested. Rhea and Gustav immediately distanced themselves from him and hid behind one of the massive pieces of dark rock in the distance. The air around them vibrated with a raw, unfathomable energy. Falco's eyes blazed with fierce, dark flames, and the spiky crown above his head flared with an intensity that outlined the eerie glow of the chains. He then let out a roar, a sound that carried the weight of his captivity and the fury of a force long restrained. The power that rippled from him wasn't just immense. It was primordial, a fundamental force that the dimension had sought to bind but never truly tamed. In an instant, the restraints that coiled around him, the sentient chains that leached his power, began to shatter. The runes that once glowed with an ominous light started to dim, their hold weakening. One by one, the chains broke, disintegrating into dust that was swept away by the shockwave of energy released. The massive rocks to which they were anchored trembled and cracked. The very foundation of the realm shook under the unleashed might. The ripple of power swept across the entirety of the dimension, causing the oppressive darkness to recoil and the whispering shadows to silence. It was like the darkness within the dimension was bending to his might and will. Within the desiccated and dark planet, the rift on the left side of the monolith suddenly thrummed, and out of it appeared a trio. Gustav and Rhea had returned with none other than Falco. Although he looked much different than normal, they had achieved their objective within the necessary time frame. Falco fell to his knees a moment later, causing the both of them to swiftly move to help him up. Don't worry, I'm fine. It's just a regular occurrence since I transitioned, Falco muttered as his body vibrated for a bit. You sure you're gonna be fine? Gustav inquired. Honestly, I feel you guys would have been better off leaving me in there. Now I pose a danger to everyone on this plane. Falco shook his head in worry. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out. Gustav placed a hand on his shoulder with a look of determination. Falco wanted to share in his enthusiasm, but he was still very bothered. Why haven't they returned yet? Rhea voiced from the other end. Chapter 1442, You shouldn't have come here. Why haven't they returned yet? Rhea questioned from the other end, his voice laced with concern. His gaze was fixed on the second rift that gaped menacingly on the right side of the monolith. The portal stood wide open, a dark maw that seemed to mock their hopeful anticipation with its silent, ominous hum. Gustav's eyes narrowed as he considered the situation. The plan had been straightforward, split into two teams, with Gustav and Rhea rescuing Falco, while Indrik and Eldris went after Angie. Yet, only one team had returned. With the rifts unstable and their time running out, anxiety began to gnaw at the edges of his resolve. We should trust Indrik and Eldris to return safely with Angie, Gustav finally said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. We still have at least 2 hours before the rifts close forever. Falco, still disoriented from his prolonged captivity, furrowed his brows in confusion. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and concern. Rhea and Gustav exchanged a glance before explaining. They hadn't embarked on their perilous journey alone. They were 4 in total, dividing their forces to rescue both Falco and Angie. The revelation seemed to shock Falco to his core. As the gravity of the situation settled, Falco's expression darkened, a shadow passing over his features. When I was imprisoned, he began, his voice low. I sensed something, or rather, someone. There was a being struggling to adapt to that higher dimension because it wasn't truly from there. It had half the properties of being from our plane. Rhea and Gustav listened intently, a sense of foreboding growing with each word. That being was probably Angie. Falco continued, the weight of his words heavy in the air. I could sense them performing some kind of, should I say, experiments. If she is truly the one, then Angie is no longer the person we all know. If Indrik and Eldris went after her, they might be in grave danger. The revelation hit Gustav like a physical blow. The mission to save their friends had been fraught with unknowns, but this was a variable they hadn't considered. Angie, transformed by the powers within the dimension's corrupting influence, posed a threat they were unprepared for. They had been trapped in there for nearly a year, and that was pretty much like a lifetime within the other plane. How else did he think things would have gone? Realization dawned on Gustav, and with it, a resolve as hard as the monolith beside them. I have to go after them, he declared, the decision made before the words even left his lips. Wait, Gustav, it's too dangerous to go alone. Rhea protested, his concern palpable. But Gustav was already moving toward the rift, the portal's dark tendrils beckoning him back into the unknown. Stay here with Falco, he instructed, his tone leaving no room for argument. I put them in danger. It's my responsibility to bring them back. With a final glance at his friends, Gustav jumped into the second rift, his figure swallowed by darkness. The portal seemed to pulse once, as if in acknowledgement, before returning to its silent vigil. Rhea and Falco were left staring at the rift, the tension and worry palpable between them. In their hearts, they knew the stakes were higher than ever. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken fears and hopes, as they waited for any sign of their friends' return from the mysterious and treacherous realm beyond. In the surreal expanse of the higher dimension, where the very essence of darkness and light seemed to coalesce, Indrik and Eldris found themselves traversing a landscape unlike any they had encountered before. Beneath their feet, dark matter spread out like an ethereal carpet, so smooth and polished that it mirrored the void above, creating an illusion of walking between two endless dark skies. Ahead, in stark contrast to the surrounding darkness, stood a figure that seemed to embody the very dichotomy of the dimension itself. Half of its form radiated a luminous white, while the other half was ensconced in shadow, merging seamlessly with the darkness. The figure was in a kneeling position, its back turned towards them, rendering its identity a mystery. Yet, something about the being's posture, the way it seemed to hold itself amidst the surrounding chaos, struck a chord of familiarity in both Indrik and Eldris. Indrik, ever the pragmatist, broke the silence that had settled between them. Doesn't this figure remind you of the being Ee and Gustav mentioned? The one that appeared on Earth and fought Jack, and also nearly freed the Death Angel? Eldris, whose memory was as sharp as his senses, nodded slowly. Yes, but they described a creature of immense power, not quite human. Yet, there's something humanoid about this one. The air around them felt charged as if the very dimension itself was holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. They advanced cautiously, every step measured, aware that the ground beneath their feet was not just a surface but a reflection of the darkness that permeated the place. It could be Angie, Eldris finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. But we remember Angie as different. The physique playing in their minds was that of a cute girl with two short, unicorn-like horns on her forehead. She had silver and pink hair that shimmered in the light. She was incredibly beautiful, a stark contrast to what was before them. Indrik, focusing on the figure ahead, responded, "I don't know what to tell you, Eldris. She has been trapped in here for too long, so anything could have happened. If the rift led us here, then it stands to reason this being could indeed be Angie. But whatever transformation she's undergone, it's beyond what we could have imagined." As they drew closer to the figure, the details of its appearance became clearer, sharpening into focus. The dark side of the figure was not merely shadowed, but seemed to be made of a void, absorbing any light that dared to touch it. In stark contrast, the white side shimmered with an almost blinding purity, creating a halo effect that seemed to battle the surrounding darkness for dominance. "Angie?" Eldris called out tentatively, his voice echoing slightly in the open space. They still weren't sure if she was the one, but tried to see if they would get a reaction. The figure stirred as if awakening from a deep trance. Slowly, it turned to face them, revealing a visage that was both familiar and utterly alien. The half that remained in the light bore facial similarities with the Angie they remembered, albeit matured, with features sharpened by experience and eyes that held a depth of emotion but still had a dark eye. The other half, however, was a stark contrast, with features twisted in a semblance of pain or anger, and an eye that glowed ominously white, as if harboring a power too great to be contained. For a moment, none of them spoke. The air was thick with a tension that felt almost tangible. "Indrik, Eldris." Angie's voice was a harmony of light and darkness, each side of her being contributing to the tone in a way that was both beautiful and disconcerting. The response immediately confirmed that she was indeed the person they were looking for. They could now properly see the stark transformation Angie had undergone. Where once there were two short, innocuous horns, now there was a single long, dark horn protruding from the dark side of her forehead, curving downwards like a saber. Her hair, once a mix of silver and pink, now flowed in a gradient from pure white to the deepest black, mirroring the dichotomy of her form. Her face, half hidden in the shadow, bore an expression of deep contemplation, or perhaps conflict, making her almost unrecognizable from the Angie they remembered. "You shouldn't have come here." Her words hung in the air, a warning, or perhaps a lament, spoken by someone who had traversed the boundaries of their nature and come back irrevocably changed. "We came to bring you back, Angie," Indrik stated, his voice firm, yet carrying an undercurrent of concern. "Your friends, we miss you. Gustav misses you." Angie's expression softened, the human side of her visibly moved by the mention of Gustav's name. Gustav, where is?" At this moment the dark side of her body wriggled and writhed with intensity. The once human gaze and expression of softness suddenly vanished as Angie's pupils multiplied within her eyes. Eldris, taken aback by the sudden change, moved to drag Indrik backward, but he wasn't fast enough. Thuum, with a single thrust of her palm, Indrik and Eldris were both sent flying backward with a force that defied comprehension. The surroundings shimmered and pulsated with instability as Angie's face distorted while she stood to her feet. A dark blade materialized in her hand as she slowly carved a line across the air like an artist painting on a canvas. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.